Chapter 1287. Qianqian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Changha. A low rematch. The furnace continued to expand as Tang Xingqian's soul power continued to pour into it. The furnace was like a volcano spewing lava, majestic and unshakable as it tried to kill Qin Hao. The flames on the furnace surged and formed 9 flaming dragons that roared above the furnace, adding to its domineering aura. If this kid enters the sacred temple, his future achievements will far surpass his achievements in the herbal medicine hall. It's a pity that he went astray and buried his talent. Deputy Yang Tai sighed softly. He observed that Tang Xingqian's ability to control fire was extraordinary. If he did not become an alchemist and chose to enter the Scorching Sun Temple, Tang Xingqian would definitely have a seat in the inner cabinet. This evaluation was very high. The other elders nodded and agreed with the deputy. Tang Xingqian was indeed outstanding. If he cultivated in the sacred temple, his achievements would be even higher. Of course, his talent could only be classified as outstanding. The sacred temple did not lack outstanding disciples like Tang Xingqian. Compared to Yu Qianyang, the gap was still not small. Yu Qianyang was worthy of the title of a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. Yu Qianyang's lips curled up slightly when he heard this. He had witnessed the battle and felt that Tang Xingqian was indeed not bad. It was a pity that the sacred temple had him. Even if Tang Xingqian entered the sect, he would never be able to make a name for himself. As he spoke, Tang Xingqian had already infused the strongest amount of soul power into his origin soul furnace, causing its power to reach its peak. The disciples of the various sects who were closer to the furnace were forced back by the heat wave. He roared, and the huge furnace that was like a volcano rushed toward Qin Hao. 9 dragons circled above the furnace and breathed out scorching hot breaths. The scene was extremely shocking. Qin Hao's expression did not change as he faced the terrifying killing blow. He stomped on the ground and raised his right arm. His fair palm slowly clenched into a fist. A glaring halo enveloped his fist, forming a spiral-shaped airflow. From afar, the airflow looked like a madly accelerating drill, sharp and incisive. If this is your best, then the genius of the southern region is truly disappointing. Qin Hao smiled faintly. A level 7 Yuan venerate like Tang Xingqian wasn't worthy of using his source soul. At this moment, the spiraling vital energy around his fist had undergone a qualitative change through the Dragon Jade art of the indestructible reincarnation art. This kind of Yuan Qi that had undergone a qualitative change had damage that far exceeded that of ordinary martial artists by several times. It was extremely terrifying. When the furnace smashed down, 9 dragon breaths shot out at the same time. Qin Hao's smile vanished, and his expression became resolute as he punched out. Bang! It was deafening. This punch seemed to have struck everyone's hearts, causing their bodies and minds to tremble violently. Crazy! The Shiliang Pavilion Master was simply a lunatic. Faced with a level 7 Yuan venerate like Tang Xingqian, Qin Hao, who was only a level 3 Yuan venerate, had actually used the power of his physical body to withstand the killing blow of his opponent's source soul. Did he want to be smashed to pieces? However, the person who would be smashed to pieces wasn't Qin Hao. In the next instant, everyone was shocked to see that the giant furnace that was violently suppressing Qin Hao had stopped advancing above his head. Under the impact of a huge force, the dragon breath that gushed out from the 9 dragons revolving around the furnace was disintegrated before it could reach Qin Hao's body. The 9 fire dragons also disintegrated. They wailed in unison before disappearing on the spot. On the arena, the space seemed to have frozen. Everyone watched helplessly as Qin Hao stood upright and punched forward. His fist entered the furnace and the 9 dragons dissipated. Had he blocked it? Everyone was shocked. Of course, Tang Xingqian was also shocked. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. Luo Yunyang had actually blocked his source soul attack with just his bare fist. Was he a monster? Bang! There was a second explosion. Qin Hao had merely blocked it. Obviously, it wasn't that simple. A fist aura burst out of the solidified furnace and completely penetrated Tang Xingqian's source soul. Then, the source soul furnace collapsed. It was a horrible sight to behold. The fist aura was like an arrow that tore through the air and flew towards Tang Xingqian in the blink of an eye. His source soul was injured. Tang Xingqian spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was full of shock, but he didn't have time to be shocked. At that moment, he saw the terrifying fist aura that had penetrated the furnace flying towards him. He formed a seal with his hands, and illusions of furnaces appeared around him one after another. Then, these illusions overlapped and turned into a furnace that stood in front of him to block the attack. However, even his source soul couldn't withstand Qin Hao's punch. How could the furnace barrier condensed by magic be able to block it? The outcome was obvious. As the fist aura flew past, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The furnace's barrier shattered into pieces, and then the fist aura entered Tang Xingqian's chest. With a cracking sound, a clear bone fracture was heard. Tang Xingqian's body flew backward and landed below the arena. "Be careful." Seeing this, Changhe Lo flew up like a rock. He stretched out his palm and pressed on Tang Xingqian's shoulder. Then, he gathered his primordial qi and pulled him back to the arena. However, at that moment, Tang Xingqian's face was pale. Blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. His internal organs seemed to be in a mess, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. When he landed, his legs went soft, and he almost knelt down. He lost with one punch. Boom! The scene was shocking. Everyone was dumbfounded. Although Tang Xingqian didn't fly out of the arena with the help of Changhe Lo, no one was a fool. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. How can he be so strong? Is he really a third-level Yuan Venerate? He didn't even use his primordial spirit. He completely crushed the 7th-level Tang Xingqian with just one punch. Tang Xingqian didn't even have the ability to resist. Many sect disciples were shocked. A 3rd-level Yuan Venerate against a 7th-level Yuan Venerate was supposed to be a battle without any suspense. However, the final victor was actually the weaker 3rd-level Yuan Venerate Qin Hao. Moreover, what the Southern Region disciples couldn't accept was that Tang Xingqian had been completely crushed before he could even force Qin Hao to use his primordial spirit. Was the Shiliang Pavilion Master even human? Good physique. A shout of praise rang out in the Arhut Palace sect. Everyone looked over and saw Hall Master Iluo, a martial emperor powerhouse, looking at Qin Hao with admiration that couldn't be concealed at all. With such fist strength and such an indestructible body, he dared to take the attack of a martial artist who was far stronger than him. However, his opponent couldn't even withstand a single punch from Qin Hao. Qin Hao's fighting style was simply the signature of the Arhut Palace. If he hadn't known that Qin Hao was Danji's Pavilion Master, Hall Master Iluo would have thought that the person who had defeated Tang Xingqian was a genius from his own sect. His admiration for Qin Hao came from the bottom of his heart. If even I can't block it, it would be strange if Tang Xingqian can. Luo Yuliang muttered, his voice full of resentment. Thinking back to the battle with Qin Hao, it was miserable. Luo Yuliang specialized in martial arts. He had received the most orthodox and excellent guidance from the Luo family since he was a child. In addition, his physique was naturally superior. Compared to the ordinary disciples of the Arhut Palace, Luo Yuliang was much stronger. However, even he couldn't withstand Qin Hao's power. Tang Xingqian, who had been refining elixirs all day and only cultivated his spiritual strength, was extremely weak. If he could withstand Qin Hao's attack, the sun would have risen from the west. Now, Tang Xingqian didn't die. Qin Hao had shown mercy. The Shiliang Pavilion Master deserves his reputation. At this time, in the direction of the Li family, Li Yaxu, the crown prince of Beio, also praised. However, there was some doubt between his eyebrows. He saw clearly that Qin Hao didn't defeat Tang Xingqian with only his physical strength. Among them, there was a layer of spiral-shaped primordial qi wrapped around his fist, which was very strange. At the moment of the punch, The primordial chi seemed to have undergone a qualitative change, and its power was greatly increased. It was very similar to the ancestral cultivation method of the leaf family, the yellow formula of Dian. Could it be that Qin Hao had some relationship with the leaf family? Had he been guided by a senior of the leaf family and glimpsed the subtlety of the yellow formula of Dian? It's just a test. Maybe Master Tang's nephew wasn't ready and failed. Xianyuan Wuba said. His serious face gave people a sense of majesty and was unapproachable. It wasn't hard to tell that he didn't think Qin Hao was that great. After all, the protagonist of this battle was Xianyuan Feng. As for Tang Xingchen and Chang Heluo, they were nothing more than foils. Although that was what he said, in his heart, Xianyuan Wuba was a little nervous. Qin Hao's physical strength was a little terrifying. It was a bit like the disciples of the Arhut Palace, which was not a good thing for Xianyuan Feng. However, the way he punched was similar to the chi-gathering state of the Li family. Was the Western Liang Pavilion Master from Western Liang? Xianyuan Wuba was a little confused. That's right, it's just a test. I was careless and underestimated my opponent. I wasn't prepared, but a loss is a loss. The people of the Herbal Medicine Hall are not sore losers. Next, my sworn brother, Chang Helo, will challenge Pavilion Master Qin. Tang Xingchen said in a disgruntled tone. However, everyone could see that he was trying his best to protect his dignity and face. In fact, in this battle, he and Qin Hao were not on the same level at all. You really know how to find excuses for yourself. Shameless Ba. Kayer said angrily. In her heart, she was very concerned about Xiao Han. However, she also knew that if Qin Hao did not fight, it would be very difficult to get Xiao Han out of the Xianyuan family's hands. In a head-on battle, Dan Ge was completely at a disadvantage. Then, Tang Xingchen retreated to the side, and Chang Helo stepped forward. I am an 8th level Yuan Venerate Beastmaster, and I understand the entertainment Tao. I would like to seek guidance from Pavilion Master Qin. Chang Helo cupped his fists. Who are you? Which sect are you from? Qin Hao asked calmly with a frown. It seemed as though he couldn't remember Chang Helo. Chang Helo's mouth twitched and his expression stiffened. He obviously knew that Qin Hao was deliberately making things difficult for him. However, he suppressed his anger and replied, I am Chang Helo, a disciple of the Spirit Beast sect. My master is... Oh, you can make your move now. Qin Hao interrupted him. He didn't have the time to understand Chang Helo's master. You? Chang Helo's anger rose and was written all over his face. This scene of being interrupted was very similar to what had happened to Elder Meng just now. Elder Meng was a half-step sword emperor and an elder of the sword sect, so it was normal for him to berate him. Qin Hao was being so rude to him. Did he really think he was a sect master? Why was he putting on airs? All right, then I will use music to try out Pavilion Master Qin's ultimate technique. Chang Helo flipped his palm, and the jade flute he always carried with him appeared. Hold on. Li Beitong controlled the auspicious cloud beneath his feet and slowly descended. He pointed at Chang Helo's flute and said, This is a worldly possession. It is unfair to others if you play the flute. But Senior Li, I am a beast tamer. Using music to control beasts is the only way for the Spirit Beast sect to compare notes with other martialists. If you don't let me use the flute, how can I play it? Chang Helo was sullen and embarrassed. Ha ha ha. Many of the disciples below burst into laughter. After thinking about it carefully, this was indeed the case. That won't do. Just summon your beast and compare notes with the master of Dan Ge. This flute is not an ordinary magic weapon. The rules just set are that both parties are not allowed to use any weapons or protective gear except for spirits. Playing the flute is against the rules, Li Beitong said stubbornly. Suddenly, Chang Helo's expression became extremely ugly. His jade flute was indeed a magic weapon. Moreover, its grade was not low. It was a top-grade venerable artifact. There was a very strong inscription on it. However, as a beast tamer, even if he summoned his beast to fight, without music to control it, the beast would not be able to exert its strength. Music was the only communication tool between a beast tamer and his beast. Music could allow them to become one, complementing each other's abilities. Without this flute, Chang Lo would never be able to defeat Qin Hao. At this point, everyone present could imagine the result. Haha, masterly, the rules are set by people. They can be slightly modified. Weapons are not allowed, but beast tamers should be excluded. Otherwise, how can he fight? Elder Meng stood out to help. Well, you can forbid Chang Lo from summoning his beast to join the battle. Let him use this flute. Another point, if there are additional effects on the flute, you can't use them. You can only compare notes with Little Pavilion Master Qin using pure music. Do you understand? Elder Meng's eyes were full of deterrence. Beast tamers were a very strong profession in the entire divine wilderness continent. On the surface, they were the same person. But behind them, there might be 1, 2, or even a group of 3 or 5 terrifying beasts. It was even rumored that a true imperial emperor could mobilize hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts to fight for him with a single thought. This was obviously very unfair to other warriors. Chang Lo was allowed to use the jade flute, but his beast could not fight again. Moreover, there was an inscription on the jade flute. Elder Meng could see through it at a glance, but he could not use it. He could only rely on Chang Lo's own ability. I can allow him to use tools. At this time, Qin Hao also spoke. As Chang Lo said, without a musical instrument, he could not display his ability. Well, if Pavilion Master Qin has no objection, then let the battle begin. But you can't summon your beast, and you can't play the inscription on the flute. Do you understand? Li Beitong warned. This junior will abide by the rules. Chang Lo nodded and secretly glanced at Qin Hao. In fact, he could also fight without the jade flute. As a soul essence beast tamer, Chang Lo's soul essence must be related to musical instruments. However, since Qin Hao agreed, was it because of the victory that caused his confidence to inflate? Or was it because he looked down on Chang Lo? Since he was looking for trouble, Chang Lo would make good use of his own advantages. After the rules were reset, Li Beitong and Elder Meng walked away, leaving the field to Qin Hao and Chang Lo. This battle was between 2 different professions, alchemist against beast tamer. Beast tamers were more terrifying than warriors. This battle would not be like the previous one, where Qin Hao won easily. Everyone thought that this battle would be very exciting. Chapter 1288. Qianqian the Primordial Pill Venerate. Chapter 1288. Qianqian Sovereign descends. Chang Lo stepped forward. His robes were whiter than snow, and his silver hair fluttered in the wind. His extraordinary aura was on full display, attracting the admiration of many female disciples from the sect. Tang Xingqian's eyes were filled with admiration as he looked at him. His sworn brother's abilities were much greater than his own. Besides controlling war beasts, beast tamers also had outstanding musical skills. Chang Lo's musical talents were even more outstanding. It was rumored that the Music Palace, the most renowned music Dao holy land in the southern region, had no disciples who could surpass Chang Lo in terms of talent. The Music Palace was one of the top factions in the southern region, just like the Herb Hall and the Spirit Beast sect. The Music Palace specialized in music Dao, and no other sect in the southern region could compare to them when it came to music Dao. They represented absolute authority. The Music Palace disciples were unable to surpass Chang Lo in the field they were most proficient in. It was clear to see just how outstanding Chang Lo's musical talents were. Chang Lo didn't participate as a beast. In this battle, Chang Lo fought as a musician. Musicians are terrifying because they can infuse their mental strength into the music they're good at. Their attacks are all-pervasive. In less serious cases, the enemy will fall into the music and be unable to extricate themselves. In more serious cases, their minds will be obliterated by the musician. An old man with a gentle voice and unique charisma spoke from the crowd. At this moment, he was looking at Chang Lo with a gaze full of admiration. The old man was the prestigious Taishang elder of the Music Palace, a great musician at the pinnacle of the Emperor realm. 2 years ago, Chang Lo had paid a visit to the Music Palace and solved a difficult problem for the elders. Many Music Palace disciples had asked him for advice that day, but no one had been able to defeat Chang Lo in a few rounds of actual combat. Even the most outstanding disciple of the Music Palace was only able to fight Chang Lo to a draw, and they were evenly matched. The Grand Elder of the Music Palace naturally admired Chang Lo's musical talent. Of course, he had secretly tried to rope in Chang Lo and took the initiative to take him in as his personal disciple. However, he was rejected by Chang Lo. Chang Lo was very tempted by the fact that the Music Palace had the guidance of a professional senior. However, the Tao of Joy was not the only thing in his heart. The reason he chose to join the Spirit Beast sect was, of course, to learn more powerful methods of taming beasts and to dig out his own potential to the limit. With his talent in music, learning a high-level beast taming technique was like killing two birds with one stone. His future was much brighter than that of ordinary musicians. In this battle, Chang Lo was not allowed to participate in the battle with his beast. He was going to fight as a musician. This caused the elders and disciples of the Music Palace to have strong expectations. After all, back in the Music Palace, no one could suppress Chang Lo. Today, to what extent could the Pavilion Master of Western Liang fight Chang Lo? Could he suppress Chang Lo? Pavilion Master Qin's alchemy skills are unparalleled. In the future, you will be a peerless alchemy master. I will give you the Sovereign's Descent. I hope that Pavilion Master Qin can surpass Dendi as soon as possible and look down on all living beings in the alchemy world. Chang Lo spoke slowly. His voice was still pleasant to the ears. However, as soon as he said this, the expressions of the Music Palace disciples changed. Sovereign's Descent. Back when Chang Lo had visited the Music Palace, he had made a name for himself with this song and won the admiration of many people. Even the eldest disciple of the Music Palace could not overshadow Chang Lo's brilliance in front of this song. They did not expect him to use a unique skill as soon as he fought. In this battle, the Pavilion Master of Western Liang was in danger. Sovereign's Descent, Qin Hao said lightly. These words triggered a melancholy in his heart. Then he nodded and said, I like it very much. After Denda's rebirth, he would definitely stir up a storm again. He would shake the 9 states and rule the world. And that day would not be too far away. Chang Lo would have a chance to see it. You don't know what's good for you. Tang Xingqian snickered and said slowly to Qin Hao, You can't bear my sworn brother's song. Qin Hao narrowed his eyes and looked at Tang Xingqian. He said, You can't beat me with one punch. Why do you have to comment on me? You. Tang Xingqian was speechless. Pavilion Master Qin, be careful. Chang Lo did not want to dwell on the victory just now. He held the jade flute to his lips. At this moment, his temperament changed drastically. He turned from an elegant prince to an emperor. It was difficult to resist his majesty. The melodious sound of the flute was heard. Chang Lo's spiritual energy was integrated into the music. Sound waves could be seen with the naked eye. With him as the center, they radiated in all directions. Everyone in the audience listened quietly. In the beginning, the first verse of the song did not contain any stormy waves. The tone flowed slowly. It was very calm, with a slight hint of depression. It was like a young man who had just been born and was growing up facing the sun. The road of this young man was not very smooth. He faced ruthless suppression everywhere. After the calm verse, the song suddenly changed. The tone was very sonorous and powerful. It was like a young man who had achieved success in his studies and had begun to show his talent. He had trampled all the people who had once suppressed him under his feet. He was like an eagle spreading its wings and flying high. Like the others, Qin Hao listened quietly. Although Dende did not understand music, Chang Lo's talent was indeed outstanding. The mood of his performance could easily make people fall into it. In Qin Hao's mind, he seemed to have seen the young man who was suppressed. Wasn't that him? Good song. Qin Hao's eyes lit up and he praised. He and Chang Lo had conflicts. The other party's character was not good, but in terms of talent, it was admirable. Not only was his talent good, this song was also Qin Hao's intention. But suddenly, after Qin Hao's praise, the music changed again. It was no longer sonorous and powerful. It became extremely sharp and terrifying. It was as if the young man had become a mighty, mighty lord. He had the capital to conquer the world. There were countless strong people under his command. He wanted to lead them to stir up the world. Affected by the music, in everyone's mind, a magnificent scene slowly unfolded. The disciples of the various sects with lower cultivation could not bear Changhelo's music. To be precise, they could not bear the young man in the mood. The young man who had become a mighty lord was too strong. His murderous aura was too strong. He seemed to be able to wipe out all living things with a casual move. The crowd below the stage was in an uproar. The warriors with lower cultivation covered their ears. Their faces were painful. Their minds were being destroyed by the music. Of course, the person who was most affected was Qin Hao on the stage. But at this moment, Qin Hao did not show any signs of pain. Wasn't the young man who had become a mighty lord in his mind, who wanted to conquer the world, exactly the same as his current situation? Qin Hao was already the master of Dangu, the crown prince of Shiliangdaqin, the son-in-law of Emperor Shao of the northern borderline. There were countless strong people behind him and many allies. The number of Qin soldiers was already huge, not to mention the fact that he could decide the life and death of millions of people with just a thought, not to mention a move. As for Qin Hao, he just so happened to possess the qualifications to conquer the world. What a great mighty lord. I won't attack you before you finish your song. But since it's a competition, if you play alone, it'll be too boring. I'll fuse my sword intent and let everyone witness how he overlooks all living things, how his name shakes the 4 seas and 8 wastelands, and how he becomes the immortal emperor. Qin Hao's heart trembled violently. Then, the sound of a sword resonated around him. Changheloa's character really wasn't much, but the Pill Emperor really liked this sovereign descends under the heavens. If he attacked now, he would undoubtedly break the mood of the song. He would not be able to hear the end and witness the young man become an emperor. Because as long as Qin Hao attacked, Changhelo would definitely lose. After all, a musician master used his mental strength as a means of attack to disturb the minds of others. Qin Hao's mental strength was of the emperor grade. His soul was as strong as a 9-star great emperor. Even if Changhelo played the flute for 10 years and died of exhaustion, he would not be able to hurt Qin Hao at all. Qin Hao really wanted to listen to the end of Sovereign Descends to the World, so he couldn't attack. Otherwise, Changhelo would not be able to play it completely. "You are too arrogant," Tang Xingqian, who was covering his ears, shouted with all his might. His eyes were red, and he seemed to be struggling. Xinyuan Feng, who was beside him, was not much better. Obviously, their mental strength was beginning to be unable to withstand the powerful music. But Qin Hao meant that if he wanted to listen to it, Changhelo would have the chance to play it completely. If Qin Hao did not want to listen to it, Changhelo would not be able to play it. How arrogant was that? Hearing this, Changhelo was instantly enraged. He changed his tune again, and the sharp sound turned into a rolling killing force that rushed towards Qin Hao's position. It was like the young man who was the commander of the powerful cultivators. Everything was ready, and he was finally going to battle. At this moment, many disciples of the various sects below groaned and even screamed. The magnificent battlefield was born in their minds. In the picture, thousands of horses were galloping and attacking continuously. The figures of the powerful cultivators were killed one after another. Millions of corpses were lying on the ground, and the sky was dyed red. The vast picture of the war was not something that the disciples with weak minds could withstand. Apart from the powerful figures of the 3 emperors and 4 sects, no one present could withstand such an epic scene. The disciples who heard the mighty Lord today would definitely be traumatized in their future cultivation. Good song, but this is just the beginning. The real path of the emperor is crueler than you think. Qin Hao shouted. His memory seemed to have traveled back in time and returned to 600 years ago. 600 years ago, the sunset battle god of the Sunset Peak and Empress Ling Xian, who was famous in the East Continent, started from scratch. The 3 of them had witnessed too much injustice. Therefore, they were determined to establish an empire that was different from other empires. For this goal, they pressed forward, disregarding life and death. They were also besieged and fell into desperate situations several times, wandering between life and death. But in the end, they succeeded and established the strongest country in the East Continent, the East Qin Empire. In the entire divine wilderness continent, the Daqin Empire of the East Continent was definitely the strongest. Qin Hao was the witness of the emperor's path and also the ruler. He could understand the artistic conception in Changhe Lo's song the best. The emperor's path in reality was crueler and bloodier than the one in the song. Buzz. The vast sound of the sword reverberated. Influenced by the song, Qin Hao gathered his qi into a sword and held a 3-foot-long sword in his hand. On the arena, he danced valiantly. At this moment, he seemed to have transformed into the young man in the song. Every time he swung his sword, the image of a monarch would appear in the minds of the crowd. Watching Qin Hao's sword dance, the crowd felt as if they were watching a great emperor slaughtering countless experts in all directions, causing the sun and moon to dim, the universe to tremble, and the 8 desolations to submit. Every sword strike was deeply engraved in everyone's hearts. Chapter 1289. Primordial Alchemist Venerable. On the stage, the sword light and music intertwined and merged together. The sword represented the emperor's wind. The music represented the emperor's descent. Just as Qin Hao had said, he had truly achieved the harmony of the sword and music. However, the artistic conception of Changhe Lo's music was far less profound than the image of Qin Hao's sword dance. In terms of expression, Qin Hao's sword was more vivid and vivid. The youth in the music seemed to be alive in his body, allowing the audience to witness the birth of an emperor. It was not like Changhe Lo's performance, which relied on the artistic conception of the music to make people imagine the existence of the youth. Below the stage, the elders of the various sects revealed intoxicated expressions. Qin Hao's sword art was peerless, and the image of the emperor was vivid and pleasing to the eyes. It was impossible not to admire him. They did not expect that in addition to his pill arts, Danji's sword art was also so outstanding. Such a vivid sword art is rare in 1,000 years. It will be a great regret of the southern region if he does not join our sword sect. Elder Meng was intoxicated and could not help but praise. The more he looked at Qin Hao, the more pleasing he felt to his eyes. With Qin Hao's talent in sword art, it would be great if he could join the sword sect. In the future, there would be another sword emperor in the southern region. Elder Meng had no doubts about this. Unfortunately, it seemed impossible for Pavilion Master Dangu to join the sword sect. What do you think? In the sword sect's team, an elder with the strongest aura, who even Elder Meng had to treat with respect, looked at Shou Wuk, who stood tall and straight beside him. Elder Meng's eyes were like torches. However, this stronger elder of the sword sect was also impressed by Qin Hao's sword art. He asked the rising star of the sword sect, Shou Wuk. Pavilion Master Qin has a very unique aura. It seems to be innate and not acquired. Even I can't replicate this temperament. Of course, if one were to disregard his temperament, Pavilion Master Qin's swordsmanship was also very outstanding. Even in the entire southern region, very few people of the same generation could be his match. He responded to Changhe Lo's curved will with his sword will, making it difficult for his opponent's spiritual will to invade. Not only that, but Changhe Lo's curved was also vaguely controlled by Pavilion Master Qin's sword will. He was completely worthy of the phrase suppressing the southern region. Shou Wuk paused and then shook his head with a smile. But if Marshal Granduncle's idea is to ask me who is better in terms of swordsmanship between me and Pavilion Master Qin, what could only conceitedly reply? Although Pavilion Master Qin's sword Dao was very special, amongst the countless sword cultivators of the continent, he could only be considered one of the best. He was still a step away from the rare level. And my sword art is named after Wuk. This is the best answer. The meaning was obvious. Based on the sword Dao that Qin Hao displayed on the stage, he could be called a genius. Shou Wuk also acknowledged this point. But among the countless sword cultivators of the divine wilderness continent, how many geniuses were there? Qin Hao is only one of them. At best, his swordsmanship could barely be considered as one of the best among the geniuses. As for Shou Wuk, he was named after the Wuk sword sect. The strength of the sword sect's swordsmanship did not need to be proven to the world. In other words, there was still a gap between Qin Hao and Shou Wuk. But this was only in terms of swordsmanship and not everything. If it was in terms of alchemy, Shou Wuk was naturally inferior. The old man nodded. It was indeed so, not to mention the southern region. In the entire divine wilderness continent, and even throughout history, how many people could compare to Shou Wuk's talent in the sword Dao? This junior of the sect was born with the sword. He was destined to become the most dazzling sword emperor in the sword Dao, without exception. Even the current sect master of the Wuk sword sect would grin from ear to ear at the mention of his nephew's talent in the sword Dao. He seemed to be the southern region's current sword emperor. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Emperor. He had long seen Shou Wuk's endless achievements in the future. However, in his previous speech, Shou Wuk did not point out that Qin Hao's sword Dao was bad. This was because even he himself admitted that Qin Hao was outstanding. The evaluation he gave was very objective and was already very high. When the surrounding sword sect disciples heard this, they revealed envious expressions. It was very rare to be praised by a figure like their eldest senior brother. Unfortunately, since there was talent, there was also brilliance. No matter how outstanding Dan Ji's talent in the sword Dao was, when he met their eldest senior brother, he would lose all his brilliance. On the stage, the harmony of the sword melody continued. However, the moment Qin Hao performed the sword dance, Changhe Lo completely lost his brilliance. At this moment, his melody was more like a foil, setting off Qin Hao's extraordinariness and greatness. As he played, Changhe Lo's heart became more and more unsettled. The melody was already halfway through, but his opponent was not affected at all by the melody of the sovereign's descent. Not only that, but the mood of the melody seemed to be suppressed by the image of Qin Hao performing the sword dance. It was even mobilized. Between movement and silence, even a slight movement of Qin Hao's sword was as if Changhe Lo was trying his best to cooperate with the melody, so as to make Qin Hao appear more perfect. He really did not expect that, as a beast tamer, the melody he played one day would be tamed by someone else. This sovereign descends the world thoroughly became Qin Hao's portrayal. Kill. An angry roar sounded from the bottom of his heart. There were only 2 bars left before the melody ended. At this moment, the part Changhe Lo was playing was the most important part of the sovereign's descent. At this moment, the sound waves that filled the sky converged into the shadows of terrifying beasts. The roars of the beasts rose and fell one after another. In the sky above the Ning family's huge auction house, dragons flew and phoenixes danced. Battle eagles flocked together in a magnificent display. On the ground, desolate beasts stood, tigers and wolves were everywhere. Next, these countless shadows of the beasts followed Changhe Lo's melody and charged towards the lone sword-dancing Qin Hao. Looking at the shadows of the beasts that filled the sky, the disciples of the various sects who were already unable to resist fell to the ground in fright. One pile after another, they lost all the face of their sect. However, at this moment, no one blamed them. No one even cared about them. Everyone's eyes were focused on Qin Hao's sword dance. The elders of the various sects knew that from this moment onwards, the most terrifying part of the sovereign's descent would be either Qin Hao would be drowned by the beasts condensed by the melody, or he would be like the young emperor in the melody, sweeping through the world and suppressing the universe. Kill! Qin Hao chanted in his heart. It was as if he had truly transformed into the young emperor in the melody. The king's sword in his hand blossomed with a dazzling radiance. He faced the beasts bravely. Even though he was alone, even though he only had one sword, what was there to fear in this world? After all, he had also walked this path in the past. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of the sword reverberated between heaven and earth. The beasts that were close to him were caught in the sword light and could not withstand a single blow. The dragons fell, the phoenixes were extinguished, and the tigers and wolves fled. Influenced by the melody, Qin Hao seemed to have become one with the young emperor. He made the strong stronger and the emperor's heart bigger. Who in the world would dare to take a sword strike from him? The process of the battle was not long. After a section, the sovereign's descent fell into its final sound. The army of beasts was utterly defeated. In front of the emperor, they bowed down in submission. Qin Hao stood with his sword in his hand. His tall figure seemed to symbolize that the young man in the melody had finally completed the final battle, laid the foundation of the emperor's career, and achieved success. The melody slowly faded. The original ending of the melody should have been filled with a joyous atmosphere. However, at this moment, it was filled with a sense of dejection. It was probably affected by Changhe Lo's state of mind. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. The ending of the sovereign's descent changed its charm. After all, he had previously been in high spirits and threatened to give Qin Hao the sovereign's descent. However, everyone knew that he wanted to kill Qin Hao. However, the song ended. Not only did he not defeat Qin Hao, but he had also made the other party's glory. This was equivalent to Changhe Lo slapping his own face. It was obvious that he had lost. Even so, everyone still wanted to continue. In this battle, whether it was Qin Hao or Changhe Lo, their performances were very outstanding. In particular, Qin Hao's swordsmanship and the spirit of his sword dance made the elders of the southern region see a different side of the western Liangyang pavilion master. Among them, Elder Meng of the sword sect admired Qin Hao from the bottom of his heart. He really hoped that Qin Hao would join the sword sect. If so, his future achievements in the sword Dao would definitely not be lower than his alchemy Dao. Wonderful, really wonderful. An expert opened his mouth and broke the silence of the scene. Yes, Changhe Lo is so young, but the artistic conception of music is so fascinating. I hope that the disciples of my music palace can take this battle as an example to learn from. The Supreme Elder of the Music Palace said. In addition to expressing his appreciation, there was also a hint of reprimand. Obviously, he was dissatisfied with the disciples of his sect. Speaking of fascinating, Pavilion Master Qin's sword dance was the sovereign's descent. The sword realm and the will of the song merged together. He was like the incarnation of a young emperor. His talent in the sword Dao really amazed Old Man. Our disciples of the sword sect must also take this battle as an example to learn from. Don't be lazy and miss out on learning. Elder Meng's sharp eyes swept across the disciples of the sword sect. We will remember. Many disciples of the sword sect responded. They lowered their heads, not daring to meet Elder Meng's eyes. In fact, they were suppressing their anger in their hearts. Did they need to learn from Qin Hao? If they wanted to learn, they should learn from their eldest senior brother, Showuk. Only eldest senior brother had the qualifications to make everyone learn from him. If eldest senior brother had been the one to perform the sword dance, he would have done better than Qin Hao. No, Changhe Lo of the Spirit Beast sect was not worthy of being eldest senior brother's opponent. Pavilion Master Qin, I am Showuk of the sword sect. Just now, your sword Dao was worthy of the word suppress the southern region. Suddenly, Showuk stepped forward slightly and expressed his opinion. This scene instantly caused a lot of surprise. Not only the disciples of the sword sect, but the entire sect of the southern region, including many experts of other sects, felt that this was too sudden. Just now, the faces of the disciples of the sword sect were filled with unwillingness. Obviously, they were promoting Showuk. They were not convinced of Qin Hao at all. However, to everyone's surprise, Showuk himself actually took the initiative to speak up for Qin Hao. In a land of the southern region, there were not many people whom Showuk acknowledged. There were even fewer people who could make him take the initiative to stand up and admit that the other party was outstanding. However, Qin Hao had done it. Today was probably the first time that Showuk publicly praised someone since he started practicing the sword Dao. Moreover, as soon as he opened his mouth, he directly said that Qin Hao was worthy of the word suppress the southern region. This evaluation was quite high. Yu Qinyang glanced at Showuk with an extremely dissatisfied gaze. People often regarded him and Showuk as top prides of the southern region. However, he had never received the approval of Showuk. However, Qin Hao, who was merely a third-level Yuan venerate, had actually received the praise of Showuk. This was really displeasing. Of course, although he was dissatisfied, he naturally did not dare step forward and directly refute Showuk's point of view. Even though the two of them were regarded as the top prides of the younger generation in the southern region, their reputations were on par. However, deep down, Yu Qinyang knew that he was very likely not a match for Showuk. If he dared to refute the other party, he would have to bear the consequences first. However, Yu Qinyang did not want to pay this price. End of chapter. Chapter 1290. The scene fell silent. The experts looked curiously at the two juniors standing in the air, Dangu, Qin Hao, and Showuk from the Sword Sect. These two young people were born in different worlds, and they were like rulers in their respective fields. Now, Showuk publicly praised Qin Hao. Was this a mutual appreciation between heroes? The elders secretly laughed. Among the peers in the southern region, almost no one could catch Showuk's attention. He alone represented an era. It was lonely at the top. Only those who were equally talented could understand that kind of loneliness. Obviously, Qin Hao was such a person. Therefore, Showuk, who was usually quiet, stood out and talked to Qin Hao. You flatter me. Swordsmanship is not my forte. I only know how to make pills. The dance just now was just improvisation. It is really embarrassing to show off in front of a genius from the Sword Sect. Qin Hao smiled and looked at Showuk. This person stood there quietly. He didn't release any aura, but his body emitted endless sword intent. The sword intent seemed to flow through every pore of his body. He didn't need to deliberately control it, but it merged with the great Tao of nature. This person's swordsmanship must be very terrifying and extreme. This kind of person, in his field of expertise, must be a demonic existence that far surpassed other geniuses. For example, Qin Hao had the ability to kill opponents one level higher than him. Showuk was obviously the same kind of person as him. Of course, Qin Hao could not make a judgment without seeing him make a move. If the two of them were only talking about swordsmanship, Qin Hao was not confident that he could defeat his opponent. This was not a matter of the level of cultivation technique. In front of a true expert, talent was the most important. And swordsmanship was not Qin Hao's forte. In the 600 years of his previous life, he had worked hard on swordsmanship and created the crepe myrtle rainbow sword technique with Wei Wei. But in essence, Qin Hao's talent in swordsmanship was not outstanding. His talent was in alchemy. Once he came into contact with alchemy, his thoughts would become abnormally active. In his previous life, Qin Hao himself had often been puzzled. Ever since he could remember, he had never come into contact with alchemy, nor had he ever been the disciple of an alchemy master. However, he was self-taught. Medicinal herbs, medicinal pills, as long as he could think of them, all of the records would automatically appear in his mind. The names of millions of medicinal pills, their formulas, medicinal herbs, how high the temperature of the flames should be when concocting pills, the strength of the flames during the tempering process, and all sorts of other details involuntarily appeared in his mind. There was no need to think at all. Qin Hao used to think that he was a weirdo. Later on, he thought that this was probably his talent. What was talent? It was destined by the heavens. He remembered that, because of this, Zhang Wu had even joked about Qin Hao, saying that he was the reincarnation of some great god from the primordial era. As a result, the essence of his first life's pill Tao was left in his mind. At that time, Qin Hao laughed and said that if he was the reincarnation of a god, he would return to the realm of the gods in the future and explore the wonderful world of the gods with Zhang Wu and Ling Xian. Once upon a time, I had an outstanding genius in swordsmanship by my side. He was extremely obsessed with swords. If he were here today, he would definitely be very happy to get to know you. Qin Hao shook off his thoughts and responded to Showuk. His tone was a little sad. Not only was he sad that things had changed, but he was also sad that Lin Feng had fallen in the Medicine Valley. In terms of talent, senior brother Lin Feng would probably not be a match for Showuk. However, Lin Feng's dedication to the sword especially the sword blade storm that he had unleashed at the end, had actually surpassed the highest level of understanding of the sword among swordsmen in this world. If Lin Feng were still alive, his level of swordsmanship would definitely reach a whole new level and open up a broader horizon. Unfortunately, as long as the heart of the sword doesn't die, the soul of the sword will always be there. The person who is qualified to be mentioned by Brother Qin must be an extremely outstanding existence. Wuck is deeply regretful that we have not met, Shou Wuck replied. From Qin Hao's tone, he could vaguely guess that that person might not be alive anymore. As long as the heart of the sword doesn't die, the soul of the sword will always be there, Qin Hao muttered in a low voice. His eyes flashed with excitement as he smiled. Perhaps the two of you will have the chance to meet. Shou Wuck was right. As long as the heart of the sword doesn't die, the soul of the sword will always be there. Lin Feng's obsession with swords was too deep. After his death, his soul could resist the heavenly Tao and not be destroyed by it. Qin Hao had a chance to use the power of the serene water to protect Lin Feng's remnant soul. As long as he obtained the universal soil controlled by the Xianyuan family, Lin Feng could be resurrected. This was his main purpose in coming to the southern region. As for participating in the South Pole Divine Palace and looking for Zheng Qinqi, they were only secondary. You two little guys are chatting so happily as soon as you meet. Wuck, you can invite young Pavilion Master Qin to the Sword Sect as a guest some other day. Don't waste his time now. Elder Meng stood out and said with a smile. He glanced at Changhe Lo on the stage. At this moment, Qin Hao and Shou Wuck were talking to each other. Changhe Lo was completely ignored. He didn't know whether to leave or stay. He stood there alone and was extremely embarrassed. Shou Wuck nodded and said seriously, Brother Qin, I will wait for your arrival in the Sword Sect. I hope that you can give me some pointers and help me open up a new great way of the Sword Realm. Sparring with peers was the best way to improve oneself quickly. I don't dare to give you pointers, but I will definitely pay you a visit. Qin Hao cupped his fists and said. Shou Wuck was a good person. Then, Qin Hao looked at Changhe Lo and said calmly, Take the initiative to go down. Sovereign's Descent. Qin Hao liked this song very much. For the sake of the song, Changhe Lo took the initiative to leave. Qin Hao wouldn't embarrass him. He could clearly recognize the gap between him and Qin Hao. No matter what, it was impossible for him to win. In fact, Changhe Lo had already experienced Qin Hao's strength. Although he didn't use his soul of origin in the song just now, it was obvious that he had reached his limit. However, he was completely suppressed by Qin Hao's sword intent, which even drove his song. Changhe Lo controlled the song, while Qin Hao could control Changhe Lo. The level of their artistic conception was not on the same level at all. But was he going to let him leave like this? Especially when Qin Hao said, Take the initiative to go down. This was undoubtedly a humiliation to Changhe Lo. How dare you? Tang Xingqian shouted angrily. My sworn brother didn't defeat you, but you didn't do anything to him either. He wasn't injured at all. Why should you let him go down? The disciples of the various sects heard this and nodded. This was reasonable. Changhe Lo's sovereign's descent didn't affect Qin Hao, but Qin Hao also couldn't do anything to Changhe Lo. At best, the two of them were evenly matched. Why was Qin Hao so high and mighty as to point at someone else's nose and let Changhe Lo go? Who's higher and who's lower? Don't you know in your heart? Xiaoguo raised his head and shouted. Melon Brother naturally understood that Qin Hao was the absolute master just now. If Big Brother made a move, Changhe Lo would have fallen down. The reason why he didn't hurt him was probably because Big Brother liked to listen to this song and couldn't bear to interrupt it. Otherwise, Changhe Lo was unscathed. It would be strange. Changhe Lo, as a genius of the Spirit Beast sect, you should recognize the facts. You are well aware of the strong and the weak. Even if you use the soul essence, you will still be defeated. Don't waste other people's good intentions and embarrass yourself. Shou Wuck whispered. Even he could see it. As the person involved, how could Changhe Lo not feel it? Then he was not worthy of being called a genius, but a mediocre person. This! Changhe Lo's face was very embarrassed. If Qin Hao asked him to go down, he could completely ignore it. But Showuk's words were very important. Wuk, you're too biased, aren't you? At this moment, Yu Qinyang of the Scorching Sun Temple looked at Chief Wuk with his eyes that were as arrogant as an eagle's. He smiled coldly and said, "Both of you are geniuses, and you are one of the top geniuses of the Southern Territory. You should know that anything can happen if a warrior doesn't use his full strength. How can you conclude that Chang Helua's battle strength is not as good as Qin Wentian's? What's more, Chang Helua's musical realm is not worse than Qin Hao's sword realm." At this moment, the scene became lively. The elders of the various sects looked at the two geniuses who were arguing. Chang Helou was restricted because of his concept. Qin Hao asked him to leave, but he refused to leave, and Showuk spoke for Qin Hao. Then, Yu Qinyang felt that Showuk's words were extreme, and that concept could not determine a martial artist's combat strength. So he spoke for Chang Helou. Who would have thought that this sword melody would cause the two most dazzling geniuses of the Southern Territory to disagree and compete openly in front of everyone? This was very interesting. You think that concept can't determine a martial artist's combat strength? Do you want to try it with me? Showuk took a step towards Yu Qinyang. At this moment, a wind blew around him, and it was bone-chilling. In fact, Yu Qinyang was not wrong. Concept could not determine a martial artist's combat strength. However, it also depended on the person. Obviously, someone like Qin Hao was not someone that Chang Helou could compare to. And with this step, he was directly provoking Yu Qinyang. Obviously, he was not happy with Yu Qinyang. Yu Qinyang's eyes suddenly narrowed. As Showuk took a step forward, it was as if a sword was about to slash at his head. Yu Qinyang's heartstrings couldn't help but tighten. But then, anger surged from the bottom of his heart. How dare he provoke him in front of so many people? All right, let's use the Ning family as a stage to exchange pointers today. After all, you and I don't usually have this kind of opportunity. Although he was a little angry and trembling, Yu Qinyang naturally wouldn't lower his head to Showuk on the surface. Everyone was watching, especially in front of his junior brothers from the sacred temple. He couldn't show any weakness to Showuk of the sword sect. Nephew Wuk, nephew Qinyang, today is mainly a dispute between the Xianyuan family and Dange. If the two of you want to fight, can you choose a more suitable place? Xianyuan Wuba's voice was full of majesty, and his emperor's qi immediately made Showuk and Yu Qinyang tremble. Junior has been impolite. Junior has been impolite. The two of them cupped their hands at the same time. Then, they glared at each other. Showuk's eyes were like swords, and Yu Qinyang's eyes were like fire. They both retreated to their respective sect teams. He, the Crown Prince of Southern Ao, is really awe-inspiring. With one sentence, the pride of the sword sect and the sacred temple's son didn't dare to meet him. I'm afraid only you, Xianyuan Wuba, have such tyrannical bearing. The sword sect's martial granduncle said, unhappily. He didn't bother to listen to Xianyuan Wuba's reply and looked at Li Beitong. So, who won and who lost this round? Li Beitong couldn't answer. Qin Hao and Chang Helou were both unharmed, so it was hard to say. Then let's continue. At this time, Li Axis stood up and looked at Qin Hao and Chang Helou. Pavilion Master Qin is really an all-rounder. Not only is his alchemy skills extraordinary, but he is also outstanding in body refinement, vitality cultivation, and even in swordsmanship. However, Chang Helou hasn't used his soul of origin and hasn't used his full strength. Why don't the two of you continue to fight? This time, show your true abilities and let everyone see who is really stronger. What do you think, Pavilion Master Qin? Chang Helou looked at Qin Hao. He really didn't want to leave in a dull state. Just now, Yu Qinyang's words that the state of mind can't determine the winner reminded him and untied the knot in his heart, giving him hope to defeat Qin Hao. I gave you a chance, but you didn't know how to cherish it, Qin Hao said. He had intended to let Chang Helua leave safely. However, Chang Helua's ambitions were not small. He had repeatedly tried to step on Qin Hao's head in order to shine brightly in the southern domain. Fine, use your soul of origin. Qin Hao could give face to the crown prince of Li family and let the people of Blazing Sun Temple see what it meant to play with fire, especially Yu Qinyang. Let him see clearly what the state of fire was. Chapter 1291. Translator. Hinyi Translations Editor. Hinyi Translations Fire Soul. Guqin Soul. Both sides had no objections, and the battle continued. The atmosphere became more tense. In the battle, just now, the two of them had harmonized their sword and intent. Even though they were competing on the stage, it was still pleasing to the eyes. The next battle would be a battle between their Source Souls. Source Souls were the most lethal trump card for martialists below the Arch Realm. The disciples of the various sects were looking forward to this battle. All the powerhouses were also looking forward to seeing Qin Hao defeat Tang Xingqian with just his physical strength without using his Source Soul. Just now, he had used his sword path to respond to Changhe Lu's music path. Under the Monarch sword, the Monarch Descends was completely suppressed, and Changhe Lu's brilliance was completely lost. So far, Qin Hao had only shown everyone his strength and talent. Furthermore, he had shown brilliantly as a third-level Yuan Venerate despite being at a disadvantage. It was really hard to imagine how strong Qin Hao would be after he took out his Source Soul. Pavilion Master Qin's sword intent is so high that you can freely mobilize my Monarch Descend style. I, Changhe Lu, am deeply impressed. In that case, I will give you the next song, Battle the Heavens. I hope Pavilion Master Qin will continue to give me guidance. Changhe Lu's eyes were filled with resentment as his soul power surged. With a sweep of his Buddha hand, a brilliance blossomed from his palm. The brilliance condensed into a Guqin in front of him, exuding an austere aura. The Guqin was his Source Soul. As for his Source Spirit, it really was a musical instrument. This meant that even if he didn't use the flute, he could still compete with Qin Hao. However, after the rules were changed and musicians were allowed to use musical instruments, he would undoubtedly have a great advantage in the next battle. He could use a magic weapon, but Qin Hao couldn't use a weapon. Unfortunately, his magic weapon was a jade flute and not a Guqin. The jade flute couldn't fuse with the Guqin soul. Otherwise, his combat strength would surely rise by a great deal, and he might be able to crush Qin Hao and shock the world with a single brilliant feat. Previously, Changhe Lu had taken a fancy to an extraordinary Guqin during the auction. However, she was defeated by Qin Hao and given to the refined scholar. Every time he thought of this, the resentment in Changhe Lu's eyes intensified, revealing a ruthless color. Releasing his Guqin spirit, Changhe Lu sat on the ground of the arena. His slender fingers stretched out, and his entire demeanor changed drastically. He was very elegant and noble. Different martial artists had different source spirits, so the aura they were given was also different. Like Shou Wuk, like a sword. Like Yu Qianyang, like fire. As for Changhe Lu, he fully embodied the elegance and nobility of the Guqin. This was even more attractive than when he played the flute. Spirit Beast Sex, Changhe Lu is so handsome. In our southern region, there's always been no lack of outstanding handsome men. However, there are very few who can compare to Changhe Lu in terms of temperament and appearance. The female disciples of the Spirit Beast sect are so lucky. Even I want to join their sect. Even if I only look at Changhe Lu from afar every day, I feel that my cultivation will improve a lot. You love-struck fool, haha. Below the arena, many female disciples of various sects were attracted by Changhe Lu's aura. They admired him and praised him endlessly. Changhe Lu listened quietly, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He had long been accustomed to it. If the girls did not praise him, it would be very abnormal. My sworn brother is really a dragon among men. No matter what environment he is in, as long as he releases his Guqin spirit, he will immediately become the center of attention. Even I am envious, Tang Xingqian said. Even though he was considered a genius in alchemy, compared to Changhe Lu, his aura was still lacking. Which man in the world did not want to be the dream lover of a woman and be fantasized by her? Then, he looked at Qin Hao. The master of Danji's appearance was not bad. However, this person was filled with an arrogant aura that made it difficult for others to approach him. A person like him would not be appreciated by beautiful women. You can't afford to enjoy this song, Battle the Heavens. Tang Xingqian looked at Qin Hao and teased. No one would be unconvinced by his sworn brother's Guqin spirit. You are so annoying. You said before that my brother-in-law can't afford to be the ruler of the world, but what is the truth? Kay, glared at Tang Xingqian in disgust. She really wanted to slap him. If you have nothing else to do, please shut up obediently. Don't be an eyesore like a flea. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're qualified to scold me? Tang Xingqian glared at him, very displeased. Who do you think you are? You can't even take a punch from my big brother, and you still have the face to stand on the arena. Hurry up and get off. Xiaoguo retorted loudly. Competing and scolding? Melon Lord was never afraid of anyone. When Tang Xingqian heard this, his nose twitched. He was very angry. He was a first-rate genius in the Southern Mountain Range, but someone called him a piece of trash. If he was not afraid of Xiaoguo's identity, he would definitely say, if you are not convinced, why don't we spar too? Boom! A flame burned in the arena, breaking the noble aura that Changhe Lo exuded. It also attracted the attention of the mesmerized crowd. Across from Changhe Lo, Qin Hao's body emitted a fiery red aura that soared into the sky. Within the flames, Qin Hao's long hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. His deep eyes seemed to be infected by the fiery aura and turned into a faint golden color. At this time, the flame around him was whistling, but his temperament was as cold as a mountain. He stood in place, like a god of fire, high and mighty, giving people a sense of majesty that they could only look up to. Flame, someone blurted out. His primordial spirit is one of the elements, the flame with the strongest explosive power, and the grade of this strange flame gives people a feeling that it is not ordinary. Everyone was surprised and subconsciously looked at the camp of the fierce Sun Temple. The group of people who were the best at playing with fire in the Southern Mountain Range were there. It could be said that the disciples of the fierce Sun Temple, whether it was the primordial fire of an ordinary martial artist or the soul fire of an essence soul martial artist, every one of them was an expert in controlling fire. Qin Hao had already shown his alchemy, body refining, primordial qi, and sword skills. At this time, he released the flame primordial spirit. Did he want to use the power of flame to challenge Changhe Lo's Guqin spirit? Today, old man's eyes have been opened. Yes, I also feel that this trip was worthwhile. Little Pavilion Master Qin has given people too many surprises. His primordial spirit is actually a flame. Old Meng looked at many of his peers. Although the flame primordial spirit was very widespread in the primordial spirit system of martial artists, its lethality was definitely among the best. Yes, it's worth watching. Everyone nodded, looking forward to it more and more. At this moment, feeling the flame aura in the field, Yu Qinyang's face was a little ugly. As the holy son of the fierce Sun Temple, Yu Qinyang's talent was unquestionable. He was born with a strong affinity and perception of fire. The grade of his own flame was also quite high. However, the flame aura emitted by Qin Hao vaguely gave him a great sense of threat. This proved that the soul fire that Qin Hao controlled was not inferior to his soul fire. In this Southern Mountain Range, in the field that he was good at, there was someone who could challenge the grade of his flame. It threatened Yu Qinyang's sense of superiority, and he did not like it. Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1292. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. To crush one's opponent, it looks scary. I wonder how powerful it is. Yu Qinyang crossed his arms and said arrogantly, "You will never forget it." Qin Hao glanced at Yu Qinyang. Did this kid feel threatened? That proved that Yu Qinyang's talent was not bad. If he did not feel threatened by the Red Lotus, the title of saint was just an illusion. Let's wait and see, Yu Qinyang said coldly. He would never forget playing with fire in front of him. Qin Hao was too arrogant. Pavilion Master Qin, be careful. When the Red Lotus appeared, Changhe Lo's nobility was washed away. He was even angrier. He pressed his hands on the zither strings and plucked his fingers. Battle of the Heavens was played powerfully. The sound of the zither was heard in the field. The style of the song was completely different from Sovereign's Descent. Sovereign's Descent was like the growth of a young man. The prelude was gentle, but the end was majestic. As soon as Battle of the Heavens was played, the song went into a frenzy. It made people's blood boil. It was as if everyone's blood was stirred by the sound of the zither and rushed to their heads. The strong desire to fight could not be stopped. Zither, zither, zither. The sound of the zither rushed toward Qin Hao. In the void, the sound waves seemed to turn into countless cold weapons. There were halberds, swords, evil knives, axes, hooks, and tridents. Thousands of weapons came out. It was like a feast of weapons. They wanted to bury Qin Hao and cut him into pieces. Many people could not help but cheer. Chang Helou's music was indeed at the level of a genius. Few people in the southern region could be compared to him. Looking at the sky full of weapons and chopping down on Qin Hao's head, the outstanding disciples of the various sect turned pale, especially the disciples of the music palace who were best at music. At this moment, they really saw how terrifying Chang Helou was. Obviously, the power of this song surpassed that of Sovereign's Descent. If Chang Helou fought their senior brother with Battle of the Heavens in the music palace, the result would be unpredictable. However, it would not be as simple as a draw. Among them, the chances of the eldest disciple of the music palace losing were extremely high. How could the master of Dangu win against him? Everyone believed that this time, it would be difficult for Qin Hao to be on par with Chang Helou. Rise. Qin Hao was not moved at all. He raised his arm and extended his index finger. A cluster of blood-like flames burned at the tip of his finger. With a thought, an incomparably strong mental energy merged into the soul fire. The soul fire seemed to have suddenly met butter, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge fire that covered the sky, enveloping half of the arena within it. As the sky full of weapons attacked, the sea of fire in front of Qin Hao surged. Tenacious tongues of fire separated and turned into the shapes of halberds, long swords, and evil sabers. They were actually weapons made of fire, axes, battle axes, hooks, and tridents. Tens of thousands of weapons were also launched, dazzling everyone. Then, these flaming weapons flew towards the sound wave weapons on the opposite side and collided with each other. Halberds against halberds, long swords against long swords. Evil sabers and evil sabers exploded into balls of light. Each ball of light dissipated with a strong sound of breaking sound. Chang Helou used sound to gather weapons. Every weapon he condensed was completely blocked by Qin Hao's flaming weapons. None of them were missed. Good. Elder Meng could not help but burst into cheers. Even if he was not good at controlling fire, his silent heart was moved by Qin Hao's ability to control fire. Apart from the Scorching Sun Temple in the southern region, it had been many years since anyone had seen Qin Hao's exquisite fire control technique. This boy's talent in controlling fire is extremely profound. He is not comparable to Tang Xingqian. It's really a pity that he was not accepted into our sect. In the temple, an elder, like Elder Meng, could not help but praise Qin Hao's swordsmanship. He is very good, but compared to Qin Yang, there is still a gap. Yang Tai said, Qin Hao's first display of his skills had shocked everyone. Since the master of Dangu was an alchemist, his ability to control fire was naturally extraordinary. However, in terms of the lethality of his flames, how could he, a mere alchemist, be compared to a combat-type sect like the Temple? Deputy Temple Master is right. Senior Brother Saint's talent in controlling fire is unparalleled. Pavilion Master Shi Liang's flames are absolutely vulnerable in front of the saint. A disciple also stood up and spoke for Yu Qinyang. Although that was the case, Qin Hao's display of skills had left many people in the temple in the dust. Yu Qinyang did not say anything. If Qin Hao only knew this move, then it was indeed not worth mentioning in front of him. On the stage, when Chang Helou saw that Qin Hao was actually able to completely neutralize his 10,000 weapons, he couldn't help but increase the intensity of his zither music. The fanaticism of the battle song abruptly increased, and when the sound wave blades were blocked, a second wave of attacks followed. The second round was a stampede of 10,000 beasts. It was like the most exciting second half of the Monarch descending song. In the void, giant dragons and phoenixes appeared. On the ground, war elephants and tigers formed a group and turned into a beast tide. Under the guidance of the battle song, they rolled up a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. They wanted to annihilate the sea of fire on the stage and the figure of the god of fire in the sea of fire. Unfortunately, in the Monarch descending song, Changhe was suppressed by Qin Hao's swordsmanship. Although the battle song was more powerful than the Monarch descending song, the same method was obviously useless against Qin Hao. His spiritual energy merged with the sea of flames, and the balls of flames turned into huge beast shadows. They looked like lava giants that walked out from the sea of flames. The beast shadows were dripping with liquid flames, and their roars shook the heavens as they charged towards the beast tide. At the moment, the fire dragon circled in the void and fought with the sound wave dragon. The fire phoenix let out a shrill cry as the more orthodox power of the phoenix crushed the sound wave dragon. The flaming war elephant on the ground stomped its huge feet and killed the opponent's war elephant. Just now, Changhe's 10,000 soldiers were blocked in the same way. Now, history was repeating itself. He could use sound waves to manifest 10,000 beasts, but Qin Hao could do the same. In fact, the power of the sound waves was even stronger than when Qin Hao used his Qin spirit to summon 10,000 beasts. Changhe was once again suppressed. Big Brother's ability to control fire is really getting better and better. Xiao was said as he watched the battlefield. He had also benefited greatly from the Beijiang Imperial Martial Competition, especially after fighting with Jiang Zizai. His potential had been greatly stimulated, and he was now a 5th-level Yuan Venerate. Although Qin Hao's cultivation base was progressing slowly, his use of innate talents had reached a superb level. This kind of innate ability was particular about merging with the Great Path. Once one's cultivation base increased, the might of their cultivation techniques would become extremely terrifying. Therefore, although Qin Hao seemed to be slow, he was actually constantly tempering himself, constantly seeking perfection, and constantly improving himself. Once his cultivation level increased one day, at that time, his battle prowess would become like a gushing ocean, unstoppable. 600 years have passed. Even time can't erase your innate talent. The Imperial Censor watched quietly. Under the Qilin mask, a pair of resolute eyes were filled with admiration and nostalgia. When he looked at the current Qin Hao, it was as if he was looking at the Alchemy Emperor of the East Continent who had once dominated the world. Divine Emperor Jiu Tian. Chapter 1293. How can this be? Tang Xingqian repeated Old Tang, Du's words in disbelief as he watched the battle. He had said that Qin Hao couldn't handle the sovereign's descent. Reality had proven that the sovereign's descent was completely suppressed by Qin Hao's swordsmanship. In the second battle, he had also said that Qin Hao couldn't handle it. He believed that the Shiliang Pavilion Master would suffer a crushing defeat. After all, his adopted brother's Guqin soul had appeared and played the battle against the heavens. The level of the sovereign's descent was even higher. But to everyone's surprise, not only was Changhe defeated, he was even beaten up by Qin Hao. This scene also surprised the disciples of the various sections. They had previously guessed that it would be very difficult for Qin Hao to be evenly matched with Changhe. That's right, the two of them weren't evenly matched this time. Instead, they were being crushed. Changhe was being crushed by Qin Hao. How can a mere 3rd-level Yuan Venerate be so strong? Xin Yuan Feng, who was standing at the back, couldn't remain calm. This kid, who was a top-notch prodigy of the Nanao, Xin Yuan royal family, was actually trembling at the moment and looking anxious and flustered. He had only been surprised that Qin Hao had defeated Tang Xingqian with a single punch. However, Changhe had been suppressed in both battles. In the second battle, Changhe's performance could already be considered outstanding. The combination of his Guqin soul and the battle song had been terrifying. However, Qin Hao was even stronger than Changhe. His control of the fire soul was exquisite to the extreme. Xin Yuan Feng no longer had the same arrogance as he had when facing Xianyuan Wuji. He started to feel a little timid. He didn't want to face Qin Hao again. He regretted it. Based on Changhe Lo's current performance, his opponent's strength wasn't inferior to his. Even so, he was still being beaten back by Qin Hao. On the field, the beast tide was defeated and the fire grew stronger and stronger. The surging sea of fire had already swallowed half of the arena and was steadily pressing in the direction of Changhe Lo. The space in which Changhe Lo could unleash his power was shrinking. Zither, zither, zither. He raised the pitch of his zither again. Obviously, he felt a great threat from Qin Hao. If he couldn't turn the situation around quickly, he might lose. Changhe Lo suddenly stood up from the ground. His murderous intent surged. The Guqin spirit beneath him floated up. He pressed his palms on the strings of the Guqin and plucked it at an even faster speed. A terrifying melody gathered into a huge storm and howled on the stage. Apart from that, sound waves swept through the void, and a translucent sun was born. It hung high in the sky like a scorching sun, emitting endless radiance. Beside the blazing sun, a crescent moon was born at the same time. The music formed an endless galaxy, surrounding the sun and the crescent moon in the middle. Rustle. The sound of the Guqin filled the air as if it had changed the climate of the southern region. The arena was cold, and snowflakes formed by the music notes fell. Then, surging rivers, towering mountains, lush ancient forests, and an all-encompassing greater thousand worlds appeared in front of everyone's eyes amidst the battle music. It was a sight to behold. Changhe Lo's music had evolved into an all-encompassing universe. Amazing! With such talent, the music palace will probably cease to exist in a few decades. Even if it exists, with Changhe Lo blocking it, it'll probably never be able to rise. Many of the elders were really shocked this time. With such talent, it was obvious that everyone had underestimated Changhe Lo's ability. This person had probably surpassed the category of the top geniuses in the southern region and was beginning to strive for the position of Shou Wuk and Yu Qianyang. On the side, the supreme elder of the music palace had an extremely ugly expression. The music had transformed into an all-encompassing universe. In the music palace, there was really no disciple who could compare to Changhe Lo. This was tantamount to slapping the music palace in the face. As the supreme music palace of the southern region, none of their disciples were a match for Changhe Lo of the spiritual beast sect. In 100 years, when the descendants of the southern region mentioned the leader of the music palace, the first person they would think of would be Changhe Lo, not the music palace. What a disgrace! What is the battle of the heavens? This is the profound meaning of the battle music. Let's see how you deal with it. Go! Changhe Lo's expression was tense. His 5 fingers pulled the strings, and his strong fingers loosened. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Several fierce sound waves swept up the universe around him. Storms, snow, the sun, the moon, the endless galaxy, mountains and rivers all rushed toward the sea of fire on the opposite shore. This majestic momentum seemed to communicate with the power of the heavenly path. It was incomparably terrifying. You are indeed a talent, but unfortunately, you met me. You caused the heavens to attack, so I will return the favor with a grand scene of burning the world. After Qin Hao finished speaking, the sea of fire in front of him burned fiercely. The flames quickly rose to a height of hundreds of feet, wanting to drown the universe. Then, endless mental energy turned into thousands of strands and merged into the sea of fire. Each strand represented a will of all creation. Everyone was shocked to see a storm of fire fly out of the sea of fire. Soon after, an even more vivid and terrifying grand sun was born. Around the grand sun, there were galaxies, giant flaming mountains, and rivers of lava. Luo Nung played the zither, and the myriad of phenomena in the heavens could be seen. Qin Hao could also use the flames to evolve. What was more rare was that even the will of ice and snow was created. In the space behind the storm of fire, countless flaming snowflakes fell and rustled. Although Qin Hao was using fire to gather snow, the snow did not have the slightest bit of temperature, let alone scorching hot. Everyone could feel that the space of the flaming snowflakes was extremely cold. The pavilion master of Xiliang used fire to release the opposite coldness. Such a fire control technique was simply... Old Meng was completely stunned. He could no longer find any beautiful words to describe Qin Hao at this moment. Even the vice palace master of the sacred palace, Yang Tai, was extremely surprised. His eyes were filled with unconcealable excitement. If it weren't for his identity, he would have run up to Qin Hao, grabbed his hand, and asked affectionately, "Are you willing to be old man's disciple?" Yu Qinyang naturally saw this subtle change in attitude. He subconsciously clenched his fists, and a strong sense of threat rose in his heart. Not only was Qin Hao's soul fire high, but his ability to control fire was also unimaginably strong. If Yang Tai really ran over and pulled Qin Hao into the sacred palace, he could indeed threaten his position as the son of Saint. At this moment, Yu Qinyang's eyes flashed with a flash of decisive, killing intent. On the stage, the two of them were performing the 10,000 heavens together. The difference was that Qin Hao's 10,000 heavens were all filled with the power of fire. Then, the two heavens began an intense confrontation. Everyone felt as if they were watching a battle between gods. The result was that the music storm was extinguished when it met the fire, the towering mountain range was melted when it met the fire, and the thousands of rivers were swallowed by the lava river. Even the ice and snow melted in the flaming snowflakes. Chang Halo was completely defeated. Puff! Chang Halo spat out a mouthful of blood. He had overstimulated his Guqin spirit, and his soul power was suppressed by Qin Hao's red lotus. His face was pale, and he staggered back. However, he still did not stop playing. His 5 fingers clasped the Guqin, and his face became crazy and ferocious. There was no longer any trace of nobility. His fingers loosened, and 5 powerful sound waves shot out, penetrating the void and directly descending on Qin Hao's body. They turned into 5 huge, scythe-shaped sound blades and coldly slashed down. At this moment, the huge sound blades split open the sea of fire and descended on Qin Hao's body. However, an even more vast crimson flame shot up from Qin Hao's body. With a sharp whistle, it smashed all the sound blades that were slashing down towards him into smithereens. "It's impolite not to reciprocate. I'll send you 5 as well," Qin Hao said. With a thought, he used his spiritual power to communicate with the soul fire. Swoosh! Swoosh! Chang Halo's expression changed. He waved his 10 fingers and played a crazy sound wave, trying to block the falling flame blades. However, there was no way he could block it. The red lotus flame blade sliced through his sound waves and hit Chang Halo. At that moment, a scream that sent chills down everyone's spine rang out from the stage. Chang Halo's white clothes were torn apart as he appeared in front of everyone with disheveled hair. 5 huge bloody wounds appeared on his body. One of them was on his face, making him look extremely miserable. However, Qin Hao controlled his strength very well. He only made his opponent look bad and did not kill him. Otherwise, with the might of the red lotus tyrannical fire, how could Chang Halo still be alive? Even so, Chang Halo's pride had suffered an unprecedented blow and devastation. If you had gone down just now, you wouldn't have learned your lesson, Qin Hao said in a calm tone, as if he had done something insignificant. This kind of tone was undoubtedly the most hurtful. If Chang Halo's Taoist heart was not strong, and he was one of the top geniuses in the southern region, he would have fainted on the spot. He barely held on. However, the faces of the disciples of the various sects were extremely ugly. If even Chang Halo was defeated, who in the southern region could defeat Qin Hao? Did they have to let Shou Wuk and Yu Qinyang fight? It was a great humiliation for them to fight against others. Chang Halo, are you a good-for-nothing? Yu Qinyang exploded. His voice was abrupt, and the anger in it was undisguised. If he really fought, wouldn't it mean that Qin Hao had the qualifications to be on par with him? Other than Shou Wuk, Yu Qinyang would not tolerate the existence of a second outstanding person, and he would not admit it. Chang Halo let out an extreme howl. His vitality forced into his abdomen, and he sprayed a mouthful of his heart's essence blood on his Guqin spirit. His Guqin spirit immediately released a terrifying light with a faint golden color. Golden color represented the Monarch grade. The level 8 Yuan Venerate Changhe Lo had forced out his heart's essence blood. Clearly, he had been provoked by Yu Qinyang's good-for-nothing remark and was ready to unleash a killing move on Qin Hao. Sure enough, in the next second, his 10 fingers covered the strings of his Guqin once again. Before the power of his essence blood dissipated, he played a terrifying sound wave that made one's heart palpitate. The sound wave was extremely ear-piercing and oppressive. It was clearly boundless. Then, everyone saw that in front of the sea of flames that had almost completely engulfed the arena, the terrifying sound wave condensed into a towering ancient god. This ancient god's body was incomparably tall, as if a deity had descended. Then the ancient god punched the sea of flames. The wind generated by the punch was like a storm, causing the sea of flames to retreat instantly. Lesser Monarch grade. Qin Hao had a grave look on his face. Chapter 1294. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios' foot descends from the sky. The level 8 Yuan Venerate Changhe Lo possessed a source spirit that could rival a level 1 Yuan Venerate when he unleashed his full power. Now, he had sacrificed his blood essence and used some strange technique to temporarily raise his cultivation base to the quasi-emperor level. His true combat strength was no weaker than an ordinary level 3 Yuan Venerate. This method of overexerting one's strength would definitely leave behind repercussions, and the price might be extremely high. However, no matter what, the current Changhe Lo had a terrifying aura, and his cultivation base was far superior to his peers. This made the disciples of the various sects scream in fear. Qin Hao stared at the sea of flames that was retreating. The ancient god was unstoppable in front of the sea of flames. Qin Hao's current situation was that he was using the power of his half-deity body and the inextinguishable samsara art. His cultivation base was roughly at the level 3 Yuan Venerate level. To be precise, he was slightly weaker than the level 3 Yuan Venerate level. However, it was obvious that he couldn't suppress Changhe Lo, who had sacrificed his blood essence. Although he couldn't suppress him, the difference between the two of them wasn't that great. If Qin Hao activated his second Dragon Soul, even if he only used 10% of his Dragon Soul power, he could instantly reverse the situation and suppress Changhe Lo. However, he didn't want to do that. Trump cards were always a martialist's greatest secret. Many times, keeping one's own secret could save one's life when one least expected it. If Qin Hao wanted to win, he would have to use some martial techniques without using his second source spirit. Qin Hao nodded. He had made up his mind. In front of them, the ancient god stepped forwards with heavy steps, rushing towards Qin Hao with an insufferably arrogant air. As it stepped forwards, the sea of fire was forced back again and again. Everyone suddenly felt a sense of hope, as if unending river was about to counterattack. However, at this moment, Qin Hao opened his arms, and even more violent flames shot up into the sky. His enormous spiritual will merged into the sea of fire, and the sea of fire gathered around him, forming a huge tornado that rose into the sky. It was as spectacular as an erupting volcano. This tornado was filled with a boundless power that could destroy the heavens and earth. You are indeed outstanding, but this is the end of it. Qin Hao slowly raised his right arm. Just as the ancient god was about to reach him, his arm slashed down. Red Lotus Bursting Blade. Whoosh! The descending arm drew a dazzling arc of light. As the arc of light slashed out, the endless power of flames around Qin Hao merged into the arc of light. It was as if a 100-meter-long flaming blade was born out of thin air. It traversed the sky and slashed toward the ancient god. Zither, zither, zither. Violent zither music surged from the opposite shore. Changhe Lo was well aware that victory or defeat would be decided with this one strike. His soul power surged towards the ancient god in front of him, the sound waves increasing the ancient god's strength once more. The ancient god roared as the 100-meter-long flaming blade slashed down. He aimed at the void and blasted out an unparalleled fist aura. Rumble. With a deafening sound, it was as if the entire auction house was about to collapse. At this suffocating moment, the crowd watched in horror as the flaming blade split the ancient god's fist aura apart and entered its head, splitting its entire body into two. However, the power of the flaming blade had been unleashed to the extreme. As it destroyed the ancient god, it also disintegrated. Clang! The sound of a broken string resounded in the auction house. Changha Lo's melody came to an abrupt end. Under his messy white hair, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His ragged body seemed to have suffered a merciless blow as it was thrown into the air. He had lost. He had been completely defeated. He had exhausted all of his abilities and should have been peerless in his generation. However, the sovereign's descent, the myriad manifestations of the heavens, and the 3 sacrifices of blood essence to transform into an ancient god were all suppressed by Qin Hao. He had exhausted his talents. However, the aftermath of the collision between the flaming blade and the ancient god was still there. It radiated toward the stage like a storm. It was the condensation of Qin Hao and Changha Lo's peak fighting strength. It was extremely terrifying. Qin Hao was not injured at all, so naturally he could withstand it. Changha Lo's zither string had been broken and his source spirit was heavily injured. It was clear that there was no possibility of him receiving it. Moreover, the speed of the aftermath was much faster than Changha Lo's flying speed. His body was about to be swallowed up. Pavilion Master Qin's strength is indeed extraordinary. Then we will respectfully obey. According to what you said before, it's 3 against 1. Tang Xingqian, what are you still standing there for? Xin Yuan Feng finally could not take it anymore. He loudly shouted, and his face was filled with panic. His face was filled with uncontrollable fear. He was very clear that at this moment, Changha Lo could not be knocked off the stage by Qin Hao. Chang Geluo was clearly stronger than him. If he was the only one left, how could he be qualified to compete with Qin Hao? Only if the 3 of them worked together would they have a glimmer of hope. He took a step forward and released his gravity source spirit, blocking the aftermath of Changha Lo's attack. Xin Yuan Feng gathered his strength. At this moment, he did not hold back at all. Brother, be careful. I'll help you. Tang Xingqian came back to his senses and also moved. He flew towards Changha Lo and placed his hands on his back, barely stopping him from flying back. At this time, a giant furnace source spirit appeared. It was surrounded by several fire dragons as it flew towards Qin Hao. Changha Lo let out a strange, ear-piercing cry. His voice was very unpleasant to listen to. He was in an incomparably difficult situation. He took out the jade flute from before and blew out an incomparably wild sound wave. Along with the giant furnace, he also charged at Qin Hao. 8 times gravity, endless prison. Xin Yuan Feng angrily roared. His palms were covered in blood. Just now, he had been injured by the aftermath of the battle. This made him deeply understand how terrifying Qin Hao was. Buzz! An earthy yellow halo spread around Xin Yuan Feng's body and chased after the furnace in front of him. Together with the sound wave in the void, it descended upon Qin Hao's position. In an instant, the top geniuses of the southern region, the Herbal Elixir Hall, the Spirit Beast Sect, and the Xin Yuan clan had been forced to work together. It wasn't that they were weak, but that Qin Hao was too strong. The disciples of the various sects were greatly shocked. No one had expected that the 3 people on the stage would really work together. In order to deal with a 3rd-level Yuan Venerate, 3 high-level Yuan Venerates had given up their dignity as geniuses. This was really shameless. Was so angry that her face turned red as she stomped her foot on the ground. Before the battle had started, her brother-in-law had said that the 3 of them should work together. However, at that time, Changha Lo, Xin Yuan Feng, and even Tang Xingqian of the Herbal Elixir Hall had all looked at Qin Hao with disdain. Was Qin Hao even worthy of that? However, things were different now. They had taken the initiative to work together. Their three souls had appeared in a very dignified manner. Even so, Big Brother still won't lose, Sayo said confidently. He knew Qin Hao's trump card very well. Regardless of whether it was against Tang Xingqian or Chang Helo, Qin Hao hadn't used his full strength at all. Furthermore, Sayo believed that even if the three of them worked together, Qin Hao still wouldn't use his full strength. Pavilion Master Shiliang is really fierce. Yeah, he sent Tang Xingqian flying with a single punch and crushed Chang Helo in 2 rounds. Xianyuan Feng obviously saw that he wasn't a match for Qin Hao, so he took the initiative to work together. TSK, I'm afraid that even you Qianyang of the Sacred Hall and Shou Wuk of the Sword Sect have never seen such a grand lineup. Pavilion Master Shiliang is really honored today. Pavilion Master Qin's strength is extremely strong. Didn't you see that even Shou Wuk took the initiative to express his goodwill? Otherwise, how would he dare boast that he could suppress the southern region? I don't think there's anything wrong with the three of them working together. However, Pavilion Master Qin is deliberately keeping a low profile. It feels like he's bullying others. However, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult for him to win this round. The disciples below the stage were discussing spiritedly. Previously, when Qin Hao had said that he could suppress the southern region, many people hadn't liked it and had been eager to challenge him. However, not many people had the guts to take the stage now. Furthermore, there were also some disciples who were secretly dissatisfied with Qin Hao. If everyone had known that Qin Hao was so strong, Chang Helo and the others would have joined forces right from the start. Strength was indeed the best proof. Before the fight, who would have thought highly of a third-level Yuan Venerate like Qin Hao? After the fight, even though he was only a third-level Yuan Venerate, his status had naturally been elevated and he had reached the same level as Shou Wuk and Yu Qianyang. Therefore, no one felt that it was shameful for 3 first-rate geniuses to join forces to fight a top-notch evildoer. No one cared about Xianyuan Feng, as the cultivation base of any one of them was actually much higher than Qin Hao's. Instead, everyone felt that this was very reasonable. On the stage, the furnace whistled and the sound waves reverberated. A yellow storm followed closely behind. Qin Hao stood calmly with a slight smile. They had really joined forces, and they were still so confident. Qin Hao's eyes were cold. It was time to end this. Domain. Buzz. A layer of illusory, purple light waves appeared and swept towards the three of them. As the light waves spread, the space seemed to have frozen. The furnace that was whistling towards them suddenly lost its momentum and slowed down like a snail, unable to move forward. Even the flames that were spitting out from the furnace were extinguished. Similarly, Chang Helo's sound waves broke into the domain and dissipated without a trace. The light waves of the domain overlapped with Xianyuan Feng's gravity, causing it to lose its effectiveness. On the other hand, the bodies of Tang Xingqian and Chang Helo, who had broken in, suddenly stiffened. Their movements were restricted, as if their bodies had been frozen in place. Tang Xingqian also realized that his and the furnace's origin soul were faintly blocked by an invisible Great Path force, and was about to lose control of his origin soul. Chang Helo even started to have difficulty breathing and could no longer play his flute smoothly. "Is this the strength of the three of you?" Qin Hao said. "Too weak. How can this be?" Xianyuan Feng saw that Tang Xingqian and Chang Helo were restricted, while his gravity effect didn't seem to have any effect on Qin Hao. This was simply ridiculous. Dong! Right at this moment, Qin Hao made his move. For the first time, he took the initiative to attack. His feet shook the ground as his body soared into the air. He was like a majestic divinity, like an unshakable mountain, as he stomped down on Xianyuan Feng's head. Xianyuan Feng raised his head, and his face was filled with incomparable horror. What kind of power was this? It penetrated his gravity area without any hindrance. Feeling the huge wind pressing down on his head, he wanted to dodge, but his body didn't listen to him. It was as if Xianyuan Feng himself had fallen into his gravity area. He could only watch as Qin Hao's merciless feet stepped on his head. Crack! The sound of bones cracking. Qin Hao's feet shook Xian Yuan Feng's shoulders. Under the overwhelming pressure, the genius of the Southern Proud, Xian Yuan family, was trampled to the ground in front of everyone. He attacked quickly, but he didn't expect it to end even faster. Xian Yuan Feng didn't even have a chance to perform before he was consigned to eternal damnation by Qin Hao's foot. What prince? What top genius of the southern region? He couldn't withstand the power of a single foot. At this moment, the disciples of the various sects, including the seniors of the older generation, opened their mouths wide and their eyes popped out. Their expressions were filled with disbelief. That was the son of Xian Yuan Wuying, the most outstanding little grandson of the third generation of the Xian Yuan royal family. He was an existence that Xian Yuan Wuji looked up to. He was actually trampled to the ground by Qin Hao so coldly. Was the Western Liang Pavilion Master still a human? The Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1295. Everyone was shocked by this scene. They thought that even though Qin Hao's talent was amazing, it would be extremely difficult for him to defeat Changhalo and the other two when they joined forces. However, reality was cruel. The three chosen of the southern domain couldn't even withstand a single blow. Qin Hao leaped up into the air, stomping down with both feet. In the blink of an eye, Xian Yuan Feng was trampled to the ground. During this process, Changhalo and Tang Xingchen were completely ignored. At this time, everyone recognized Qin Hao's strength again. When they thought back to the scene when he fought with Tang Xingchen and Changhalo, perhaps Qin Hao didn't even use his full strength at that time. Those who were shocked were not only the ordinary disciples of the various sections. Yu Qinyang stood there in a daze, his eyes dull. Even he didn't expect Xian Yuan Feng to be so weak. Of course, with his ability, it was not difficult to defeat the three of them together. But it would not be as easy as Qin Hao. After the fight, Qin Hao's clothes were neat and clean, and there was not even a trace of injury. Artistic conception can't determine the level of one's strength. Qin Hao stepped on Xian Yuan Feng and looked at Yu Qinyang. Yu Qinyang's heart trembled violently several times, but he couldn't answer. What else could he say? Qin Hao fought Changhalo twice and burned everything in the sky. His attainment was far above Changhalo's. Of course, in terms of combat strength, Qin Hao was probably superior to his opponent. But at this time, any rebuttal seemed pale and powerless. The winner was always right. Thinking about it from another perspective, Changhalo won, and the theory was also valid. However, Qin Hao openly confronted Yu Qinyang, obviously to help show Wuk maintain his point of view. I am willing to experience Pavilion Master Qin's fire artistic conception. Yu Qinyang's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Only by fighting could he prove himself. No time. Qin Hao flatly refused and didn't look at Yu Qinyang anymore. It was not that he was afraid of him, but that he was no match for Qin Hao. Perhaps Yu Qinyang was the same as Zhou Wudao. He could let Qin Hao experience the battle to his heart's content, but in the end, he couldn't change anything. Moreover, Qin Hao really didn't have the time. He was going to get Xiao Han back, so how could he have the time to waste time and energy on the juniors of the Southern Territory? Yu Qinyang was even more displeased. He didn't even have a chance to prove himself. Qin hadn't give him any face at all. This brother Qin is interesting. Shouk shook his head and smiled. He was moved by Qin Hao's strength. However, his state of mind was open-minded, and it wasn't that he couldn't tolerate the existence of more outstanding people. If such a monster were to appear, they could work together. Then, Qin Hao looked at the Xian Yuan family's camp and looked at Xian Yuan Wuying. Dinda could naturally feel the murderous intent that Xian Yuan Wuying revealed before he went up to the stage. Perhaps in Xian Yuan Wuying's heart, he thought that Xian Yuan Feng could kill Qin Hao as easily as stepping on an ant. Now, seeing his son being trampled under someone else's foot with his own eyes, Xian Yuan Wuying wondered how he was feeling. In the crowd, Xian Yuan Wuji felt extremely bitter. He wasn't surprised by the result. However, seeing Xian Yuan Feng being casually trampled to the ground by Qin Hao, he couldn't help but feel shocked. Qin Hao's strength was even stronger than when he was in the Emperor Martial competition. If he fought with Zhou Wudao again, Zhou Wudao's performance wouldn't be much better than Chang Helou's. At this moment, Xianyuan Wuji secretly glanced at his second uncle. Xianyuan Wuying's face was blank, as if he had lost his soul. It could be seen that witnessing his son being stepped on by someone else was a huge shock. However, he had previously told Xianyuan Wuji that he wanted to witness Xianyuan Feng's talent in gravity. His son's talent was unparalleled in the family, and he was a role model for others to learn from. It was a rare opportunity. Could it be that this was the way to let people learn? Learn how to be stepped on? Impudent. Suddenly, the dazed Xianyuan Wuying came to his senses. He glared at Xianyuan Wuying and roared, "How dare you?" Xianyuan Wuba's response was even sharper. He released his emperor's intent, crushing the void and rushing toward the stage like a river bursting through a dam. At the same time, at least 5 or 6 equally powerful emperor's intents were released from the outside, forming arrows in the void and colliding heavily with Xianyuan Wuba's law of gravity. This battle was witnessed by everyone. Before the competition, Qin Hao had stood out and invited the other seniors of the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects to be witnesses. Now, Xianyuan Wuba had broken the rules and wanted to attack Qin Hao. He was looking down on the other emperor-level experts. If they didn't stop him, they wouldn't have the face to stay in the southern region. Li Yaxu, Luo Ho, Duanmu Qingwei, Ning Hongxian, Meng Xiang. You. Xianyuan Wuba took 2 steps back, his face flushed. In terms of individual strength, he might be the top existence present. However, facing 5 or 6 emperor-level experts and a half-step Yuan emperor, he still couldn't bear it. Xianyuan Wuba, you've gone too far. Meng Xiang, who was Elder Meng of the Sword Sect, said coldly. Do you have any shame? Luo Ho's face was full of smiles as he rubbed his big bald head with his thick hand. Beside him, Luo Yuliang chuckled. The rules have been set in advance, so we should do things according to the rules. Pavilion Master Qin has won. Li Yaxu and Ning Hongxian looked at each other. As long as the Xianyuan family was humiliated, the Li family didn't mind joining forces with the Ning family. As for Qing Lao, he stood quietly. He and Qin Hao were close friends. Naturally, he wouldn't sit back and watch the other party get attacked. Are you angry from embarrassment? Qin Hao said calmly. Facing Xianyuan Wuba's emperor intent attack again, there was no fear on his face. According to the agreement, let her out. Let her out. Hand her over to old man. Let my sister out. For a moment, Danji's camp was filled with voices. Everyone's expectant eyes fell on Xiaohan. Even the few experts who attacked just now were all staring at Xianyuan Wuba. Ha, let who out? Xianyuan Wuying pretended not to know. You know what you're doing. The Imperial trainer warned. Xianyuan Wuying glanced at Danji's Imperial trainer and said disdainfully, I just said that if he wins against Feng I'll consider letting Long Xian stand out. Now, I've thought about it. Pavilion Master Shiliang is too scheming. He's bewitched so many experts in the southern region to show off against the Xianyuan family. Such a vicious person doesn't deserve to face Long Xian. If I had known that the Saint Soul Elixir was in his hands, the Xianyuan family wouldn't have participated in the auction today. Goodbye. Xianyuan Wuying waved his hand and ordered someone to bring Xianyuan Feng down. The group was about to leave. Xianyuan Wuba, do you really think that the Ning family doesn't exist? Ning Hongxian took a step forward and released his majestic aura. He blocked the experts from the Xianyuan family and said coldly, hand her over, and you can leave. Otherwise, what if I don't? If I don't hand her over, what can you do to me? Xianyuan Wuba retorted, raising his arm high. Boom! The starry veil that shrouded the auction house exploded. The Xianyuan family's gravity vitality was forcefully extracted. The array disappeared instantly, revealing the clear sky. At this time, above the clear sky, an 8-winged black dragon roared and tumbled. 5,000 peak elite warriors of the Xianyuan family held long spears and formed a battle formation in the void, exuding the oppression of millions of soldiers. In front of the battle formation, 6 white-bearded old men stood with their hands behind their backs. exuding a powerful aura. A platinum luster surged on their bodies, making them look like insufferably arrogant emperors. Every one of them had reached the mid-level emperor-level cultivation base. Any one of them wasn't someone that Li Yaxu and Ning Hongxian could easily deal with. Next move. This time, there were actually 6 emperors from the Xianyuan family hidden in the team accompanying them. This was something that the elders of the various sects didn't expect. And that 8-winged black dragon was obviously also at the level of a beast emperor, including Xianyuan Wuba himself. There were 8 emperor-level experts from the Xianyuan family present. Who could stop them? Old man Xianyuan Xiu greets Prince Hongxian and Prince Yaxu. Old friend Yang Tai, you seem to be very surprised. Among the 6 old men, the leader had the strongest aura. He faintly showed signs of entering the high level of the Arch Realm. He smiled and looked at the deputy hall master of the Sacred Hall, Yang Tai. Yang Tai's face fell, and he didn't answer. He wasn't the only one who was surprised. Who wasn't? Xianyuan Wuba, what do you mean? Ning Hongxian couldn't help but show a nervous look. With such a lineup, they broke into the Ning Wu Empire without anyone knowing. If any one of them went crazy, it could cause a devastating disaster in an instant. Emperor-level experts had always had a sense of territory. A mountain couldn't accommodate 2 tigers. In their own territory, the intrusion of emperor-level experts from the outside world was tantamount to provocation. Nothing. It's a long way, and it's not very safe. There are more elders following us. Xianyuan Wuba replied lazily, but the meaning behind his words was obvious. He had so many elders behind him. Ning Hongxian wanted to play with him in his own territory? Not so easy. I'll be frank. Lung Xian, I won't let her stand out. And my Xianyuan family has no intention of provoking the Ning family this time. But, Ning Hongxian, don't force me. Xianyuan Wuying said courageously. If he was forced into a corner, the 6 emperors and the Dragon Emperor in the sky were enough to turn Golden Light City into history. At this moment, Ning Hongxuan's expression was incomparably ugly. Not to mention him, any of the top forces present was probably unwilling to provoke the Xianyuan family again. At this time, the balance was obviously unbalanced. And Qin Hao, after all, was not a member of their sect. Even if he was an outstanding cabinet disciple, no sect would fall out with the Xianyuan family just because of a mere cabinet disciple. Once the emperor-level experts were involved in a war, it was enough to threaten the sect's survival. Qin Hao noticed the subtle feeling in the air. He smiled coldly and didn't take it to heart. After all, he was an outsider. The people of Western Liang were weak. He never expected that the powerhouses of the southern region would really stand up for him. As long as Dangu didn't cause others to criticize him and arouse the attention of the southern region's Du Wai, it was enough. Qin Hao moved. He bent down, stretched out his big hand, and wrapped it around Xianyuan Feng's neck. He slowly stepped down. Xianyuan Feng's shoulders were crushed, and he was injured by Qin Hao's aura. He couldn't resist, and could only struggle in vain as he was carried off the stage by Qin Hao. Do you want him to live or die? Qin Hao said and raised his arm. Squeak! Xianyuan Feng was lifted in midair, his legs struggling wildly. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the scene was unusually tense. Everyone was shocked. Qin Hao really dared to make a move. Fenger! Xianyuan Wuying's eyes were anxious, and he subconsciously took a step forward. Xianyuan Feng was his most outstanding son and his only son. The higher the cultivation of a cultivator, the more difficult it was to give birth. He was more than 100 years old this year and was about to enter the imperial realm. There wasn't much hope for him to have a second heir. Xianyuan Feng was his everything. However, Xianyuan Wuba raised his arm and blocked in front of Xianyuan Wuying. His cold eyes were filled with the ruthlessness of an emperor. He stared at Xianyuan Feng under Qin Hao's palm and said, Feng, are you afraid of death? Chapter 1296. Chan Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The War King descends. The Demon King appears. Xuanyuan Wuba's words sent chills down everyone's spines. Was he abandoning his nephew? Who wouldn't be afraid of death? Everyone in the world was in awe of death. The higher one's cultivation was, the more honorable one's status was. They were even more afraid of death. Not being afraid meant that there were more important things or missions that were above death, making people forget their fear. Xianyuan Feng laughed bitterly in his heart. He had the most powerful family in the southern region, and his talent was outstanding. He was destined to have a bright future. Perhaps in 100 years, he would be able to stand on the stage of the continent, side by side with the emperors, and be worshipped by everyone. He didn't have the time to enjoy all of this, nor did he have the chance to take a look. Now, his uncle's will was very clear, and he couldn't resist. Was he unwilling? What could he do? Xianyuan Feng's gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on Xiaohan. This woman had a great secret, and this secret could change the fate of the Xianyuan family, break the shackles of the emperor level, and let the Xianyuan family stand at the peak of the continent, becoming the only one. Although his status was honorable and his talent was extraordinary, it was nothing compared to breaking through the emperor level and entering the god level. For the glory of the Xianyuan family, I, Xianyuan Feng, am willing to sacrifice my life and die without regrets, Xianyuan Feng said. He looked at his father one last time, his eyes filled with tears. He knew that his father still loved him very much. But between the future of the family and his father could only choose the latter. Fenger, I'm sorry. Xianyuan Wuing suddenly burst into tears, his tears flowing like a spring. His cries moved all the cultivators present. Good, Xianyuan Wuba shouted. After you die, the family will confer you the title of prince. When I ascend the throne, your father will be the king of equality. He will be proud of the South, and when the people see your father, it will be as if I'm there. In the future, my son will be his son. When he dies, the entire Xianyuan family will wear mourning clothes for him and be buried in the ancestral mausoleum with the rights of the emperor. Boom! Everyone's heart trembled, especially translation Ning Feiyang. Based on his relationship with Ning Hongxian, he would be the king when the king. However, Xianyuan Wuba actually bestowed the title of king equal to Xianyuan Wuying, making him no different from DD. What kind of glory was this? Although after Xianyuan Feng's death, even if he was conferred the title of prince, it would be useless no matter how great the honor was. After all, he was already dead. However, his death had given his father the title of king equal. Xianyuan Wuba was really willing to sacrifice, and his methods were also ruthless. Xianyuan Feng, congratulations in advance for your ascension to the throne and for leading our Xianyuan clan to the highest glory. Xianyuan Feng congratulates King Pingdeng. However, I am unable to serve you in front of father. Forgive me for being unfilial. Xianyuan Feng struggled with all his might and spat out these words with great difficulty. Xianyuan Wuying almost fainted. Seeing this, Xianyuan Wuba ordered his men to support his brother. His cold eyes stared at Qin Hao and said, "Do it. Xianyuan Feng is dead, and all of your Shiliang people will be buried with him." You think I don't dare? Qin Hao's blood boiled as a vast dragon force extended from his arm. Exerting force from his palm, he pinched Xianyuan Feng's face until it was distorted. Traces of red lotus fire qi entered Xianyuan Feng's body and corroded his organs. Even though Xianyuan Feng tried his best to restrain himself, he still couldn't help but let out a painful scream. However, Qin Hao didn't crush Xianyuan Feng to death in the end. It wasn't that he didn't dare, but that he couldn't. If Xianyuan Feng was alive, he would more or less be a hindrance to the Xianyuan clan. Even if it didn't affect the overall situation, it would still make them wary. However, if he was completely dead, as Xianyuan Wuba had said, apart from Qin Hao, no one else in Dan Ji's group of 40 would be able to leave the southern region alive. Qin Hao couldn't ignore the overall situation. Melon Brother, Gnawing Tube, Iron Bite, and even the silly old man Dan Ge behind him were his family. The reason why Qin Hao was so strong was because he was having a psychological battle with with Xinyuan Wuba. Obviously, Qin Hao had lost in the end, because Xinyuan Wuba was even more ruthless. Little Pavilion Master Qin, don't let loyalty get the better of you. In the stalemate, old Meng stepped forward. He couldn't bear it. Qin Hao was a rare genius. Everyone had seen with their own eyes how he had suppressed the combined forces of the three chosen from the southern domain. In terms of alchemy, body refinement, vital energy, the Tao of the sword, and control of flame, there was nothing he couldn't master. There was nothing he couldn't master, and his talent was on par with flawless. If such a genius really crushed Xianyuan Wuying's son to death, it would undoubtedly push him into the abyss. Little Pavilion Master Qin, Crown Prince of Nanao, why can't both sides take a step back? Why do you have to go to such extremes? Is it better for both sides to be crippled? Old Meng persuaded. Losing Xianyuan Feng was indeed a heavy blow to the Xianyuan clan. It was equivalent to breaking one of Nan Ao's future arms. Similarly, Qin Hao wouldn't die. At this moment, Old Meng's eyes fell on Xiao Han. His eyes were full of doubts. What kind of woman was this? Qin Hao, who was peerless in his generation, was infatuated with her and made Xianyuan Wuba cut off all means of retreat. He didn't hesitate to sacrifice one of the future leaders of the clan. Outstanding women in the world are like carps in the river. With Little Pavilion Master's talent, what kind of woman can't you get? Don't be stubborn and ruin your great future. Let go. Old Meng sighed. Let go. Qin Hao slowly turned his head and sneered. Senior Meng, I know you have good intentions, but you may not know that she is the beloved daughter of Northern Region's Daoyao Emperor, Zhao's only child. She is my wife. Senior, please tell me, how should I let go? How should I let go? Qin Hao shouted the last word hysterically. It was like a dragon's roar reverberating in the wilderness, shocking all the experts. Northern Region's princess? The girl who was surrounded by maids in the Xianyuan family's camp like a fairy was Northern Region's martial Emperor Daoyao's princess. In that case, Qin Hao was not only the master of Western Yangdangu, but also Daoyao's prince consort. In an instant, everyone's eyes fell on Xianyuan Wuba. Other than shock, there was only astonishment. First of all, they were shocked by the identity of Qin Hao and Xiao Han. Secondly, what had Xianyuan Wuba done? He had the martial emperor's princess under his control. So this was the case. At this moment, everyone finally understood and could understand why Qin Hao had no hesitation and was unwilling to retreat from the start. Xianyuan Wuba, how dare you? Ning Hongxian shouted in shock. He had the martial emperor's daughter under his control. Xiao Han was Daoyao's only successor. She was the next empress. If this happened in the southern region, it would be equivalent to declaring war on the other empires. This was a serious matter. Why didn't Qin Hao mention it before? Otherwise, Ning Hongxian wouldn't have. Xianyuan Wuba, you're playing with fire. The sword sex martial granduncle stepped out. His wrinkled face was very serious. It was fine if the Xianyuan family was playing with fire. If the Northern Region's army came and the two regions went to war, the three sovereigns and four sects wouldn't be able to stay out of it. In the end, the billions of people would suffer. Are you still not going to hand her over? Luo Ho also stepped out. However, this time, he didn't deliberately speak for Qin Hao because of Luo Yuliang. The impact of this matter was great enough. It had already endangered the Arhut Palace. If the two regions went to war, the forces set up by the Arhut Palace would be involved. They couldn't avoid it. That would hurt the sect's foundation. It was the same for the other sect. Why do you need to ask about the Xianyuan family's business? Do you have nothing better to do? Xianyuan Wuba smiled coldly. With the support of the 6 martial emperors and the Dragon Emperor, he had the absolute upper hand. He didn't need to take anyone seriously. Moreover, he said that Lung Xian is the princess. Is she really the princess? It's just a one-sided statement. Ridiculous. Xianyuan Wuba put his hands behind his back. As long as the arrow in Xiao Han's body was forced out, the Xianyuan family would obtain a divine artifact. In addition, this woman had a divine aura. Her power was vaguely above the martial emperor level. With the divine aura protecting her, no one could do anything to her for the time being. Now, he had to firmly control her. He had to think of a way to force the arrow out and extract the divine aura. As for her beauty, there were all kinds of beauties in the southern proud border. The person in charge of a Xinyuan family wasn't that stupid. Do you think my words are ridiculous? Qin Hao said. He looked at the Imperial censor. Call him over. The Imperial censor nodded. Qin Hao naturally asked him to call Duan Zhanfei. With the current situation, there was no time to wait for Duan Zhanfei and Great Emperor Ning Wu to negotiate. The Imperial censor took out half of a jade sound slip. The other half was in Duan Zhanfei's hands. They had an agreement to protect each other. As long as one side broke, the other side would rush over in the shortest time possible. At this moment, the Imperial censor crushed this half of the sound slip into powder in front of everyone. Whoosh! In the clear sky, there seemed to be the sound of wind sweeping through. The 8-winged black dragon let out a few uneasy roars. It seemed to have sensed a terrifying force tearing through space and approaching quickly. 1 breath, 2 breaths. The scene was terrifyingly quiet. The heartbeats of the disciples of the various sects could be heard clearly. Everyone was suffocating. They didn't dare to breathe and waited quietly. Qin Hao said to call for help. Could it be that there was another expert behind him? Then, what kind of cultivation level was this person? Xinyuan Wuba also felt a sense of seriousness. Under such circumstances, Qin Hao still dared to call for help. Obviously, the person who came would not be a common person. 3 breaths. 4 breaths. 5 breaths. 6 breaths. Time passed by in minutes and seconds, but it seemed so long. Crack! After 7 breaths, a sudden clap of thunder in the clear sky echoed between heaven and earth. Everyone looked up and saw a beam of dark light descending from the sky. In an instant, within the dark light, the majesty of the Emperor's stage was unstoppable. The fierce, murderous aura sent the 5,000 top elites of the Xinyuan family into a frenzy. The 6 emperors also dodged one after another. Their hearts trembled. Emperor's stage, someone said. At this moment, the dark light landed, and the ground was torn apart under a pair of feet. Everyone saw that beside Qin Hao, a middle-aged man in black appeared out of thin air. This middle-aged man had delicate facial features and exuded a free and easy aura. His temperament was like that of a scholar, but his aura was mixed with an astonishing murderous aura. It was as if his hands were stained with the blood of thousands of people, and the bones under his feet were piled up. Uncle Duan. Looking at Duan Zhanfei, Qin Hao's throat was a little choked up. In the face of such a strong person, the Spirit Bee sect, the Herbal Pill Hall, the Blazing Sun Temple, and even the Ning family were all bullying him. They either demonstrated their strength, provoked him, or challenged him on the stage. All of them were the southern region showing their strength. At this time, with the arrival of an elder, Qin Hao's tired shoulders finally had some sense of support. Duan Zhanfei nodded lightly and glanced at Xinyuan Feng, who was being strangled by Qin Hao. Of course, he knew how much pressure the other party was under. Next, his calm eyes looked at the Xinyuan family's camp and saw Xiao Han in the crowd, whose eyes were empty and had lost all spiritual energy. Suddenly, thousands of murderous intent burst out from the bottom of his calm eyes, and he said in a hoarse voice, "Battle King Duan Zhanfei, under the command of Emperor Xiao of the northern border. Those unrelated to the sect of the southern region, please leave." As he spoke, a set of ferocious demonic armor covered his body. The delicate middle-aged man looked like a demon king descending to the world. At this moment, he stepped toward Xiao Han. His body was incomparably tall. Chapter 1297. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Emperors and Ministers. Everyone's heart trembled. The person Qin Hao summoned was an emperor-level cultivator. There were less than 100 emperors on the continent, and the entire Divine Wilderness continent was actually controlled by emperors. Every word they spat out had sufficient weight in itself. And Duan Zhanfei introduced himself, claiming that he was the warlord under Emperor Shao. Obviously, Qin Hao and Shao Han's identities were very real. Xinyuan Wuba was in trouble, but Duan Zhanfei's emperor-level cultivation wasn't high. Many powerhouses present could feel that he was just a lower-level emperor. It was just that his blood aura was too strong, and his murderous aura was too strong. He must have been tempered by thousands of flames and blood. This was something that other powerhouses in the Grand Dominion didn't have. Even Xinyuan Wuba couldn't help but feel very uncomfortable facing Duan Zhanfei's murderous aura. However, he dared to face the huge Xinyuan family alone without any scruples. This wasn't Beijiang. Wasn't he afraid of being besieged by the emperors? Did he want to die? No one present could understand Duan Zhanfei's feelings. They only saw him charging forward without any fear. And only Qin Hao understood this spirit. Duan Zhanfei followed Shao Yi for 10 years and went through countless difficulties to quell the rebellion. This kind of person had climbed out of a pile of corpses countless times. To him, death was just an ordinary word that had no meaning. Duan Zhanfei's belief was Shao Yi. Fighting for the emperor was a supreme honor. It was in the past and it was now. So was death. For Daliao, for the Shao family, he could die at any time. Not to mention facing the Xinyuan family. Even if he was facing the entire southern region, Warlord Daliao would not shrink back. This was his mission and also where he belonged. He only had one goal, and that was to protect the princess at all costs. But what surprised Qin Hao was that Uncle Duan's cultivation had improved by another level since the Emperor Martial competition. How dare you? In the sky, Xinyuan Xiu roared and was about to stop Duan Zhanfei. Duan Zhanfei looked down on everything and stepped on their emperor. Did he have a death wish? Nobody move. Xinyuan Wuba raised his hand as a ferocious expression appeared at the corner of his mouth. A mere 2-star monarch is worthy of being called a king. Xinyuan Wuba's words were filled with mockery. People like Duan Zhanfei were only at the bottom of the monarch rank in the 3 great clans of the southern region. To ordinary martial artists, Duan Zhanfei was like an insurmountable mountain. In the Xinyuan family, the Ning family, and the Li family, at best, they could be top battle generals, but they didn't have the right to be called kings. So it's not just the Western Liang that has declined. There's also the northern frontier. Second stage, Emperor Yuan. Let's see what qualifications you have to call yourself king. Xinyuan Wuba growled as he raised his fist, stirring up the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. A dazzling white gold light gathered, filled with endless gravity precepts. That power caused the void to tremble. The huge aura of the Fourth Order Yuan Emperor immediately surpassed the murderous aura emitted by Duan Zhanfei. Then, he threw out a punch. Stop! Boom! It was like a bolt of lightning. A majestic roar penetrated the void and descended on the scene. Everyone's ears couldn't help but roar. This roar was extremely oppressive. Many emperors present couldn't resist it and had an uncontrollable urge to kneel down. There were also strong and weak emperors. 9-star great emperors were the strongest in the mortal world. Below the title of Great Emperor, none of the other emperors dared to compete with them. At this time, this loud roar was obviously made by a 9-star great emperor. Immediately, a vortex appeared in the void, and the space was torn apart. An incomparably tall figure, dressed in a yellow robe with 9 dragons, stepped out of the vortex. At this moment, the 8-winged black dragon in the sky fell for no reason and crawled on the ground. Its dragon body trembled, and its noble head was buried deep in the ground. The 6 emperor-level elders of the Xinyuan family were also directly suppressed by this roar. Each of them trembled in fear. The 5,000 soldiers of the Xinyuan family were almost scared out of their wits and knelt down. At this time, there was only one person standing in the void. Sun greets father. Facing the figure in the void, Ning Hongxian and Ning Feiyang knelt down on both knees and saluted as subjects. We greet Great Emperor Ning Wu. Whoosh! No matter which force they were from, those with lower seniority all knelt down. This was not because they were oppressed by the other party's strength, but because they were incomparably respectful to a 9-star great emperor. Of course, The sect leaders and elders of the various sects did not kneel down because of the aura. However, they also lowered their statuses and saluted the void with cupped fists. It was not only the sect leaders and elders of the various sects who had stepped into the peak of the Emperor realm, the half-step Yuan Emperor realm, and the true Emperor-level powerhouses did the same. This group of people had their own pride, and they also had the qualifications to break through to the 9-star Great Emperor realm. There was no need for them to kneel. In addition, there were a few people who had not reached this level, but they also did not bow down. Qin Hao, Sayogwa, Ke-er, the Imperial Censor, and the elegant scholar sitting in the audience seats. Qin Hao, the Imperial Censor, and the elegant scholar. The three of them were very calm and were not even affected at all. However, Sayogwa and Ke-er had to muster up all their strength to barely support their knees and not kneel down. Among them, even the two powerful emperor servants of the elegant scholar had to bow to Great Emperor Ningwu. It could be seen how high the status of a 9-star Great Emperor was. Wuba greets Great Emperor Ning. Xinyuan Wuba did not dare to be negligent. The person in the void was on the same level as his father. Even Xinyuan Wuying, Xinyuan Wuyao, and all the princes of the Li family, Li Yaxu, bowed at the same time. Nephew Wuba, Nephew Yaxu, fellow Taoists, you may rise. Ning Lingjue smiled faintly. His body slowly descended, but he did not completely land on the ground. He was still suspended in midair. It was just that he was closer to the crowd now. After saying that, Ning Chao's cold gaze swept over the surroundings, nodding at many familiar faces. Finally, he helplessly looked at Duan Zhanfei. Little brother Duan, I'm wearing a battle armor. You are really making things difficult for me. When the sound slip under Duan Zhanfei's control shattered, he knew that something big had happened to the Imperial messengers. He tore through space and arrived without saying anything. He was a guest in Ning Lingjue's palace, but Great Emperor Ning Wu could not be with him all the time. When he noticed that Duan Zhanfei was heading towards the golden light, he immediately chased after him. Even so, he was delayed by a few breaths. And these few breaths had almost ignited a war. Brother Ning, you know what I mean. Duan Zhanfei did not look at Ning Lingjue and said with his back facing him. During these days of interaction, other than the differences between the customs of the two countries, the matter of Shaohan was the most important thing. However, Duan Zhanfei could not accept Ning Lingjue's conditions. In fact, Battle King Daliao had already made a big concession. As long as Ning Lingjue was willing to take on this matter, Daliao was willing to pay 1 billion heaven crystals and 10 pinnacle emperor weapons. The northern border and the southern region were separated by an endless ocean. Otherwise, Duan Zhanfei could agree on behalf of Shao, even if they had to give up their country. Daliao was willing to do anything for this. However, Ning Lingjue's conditions were too harsh and even a little too much. He actually wanted Qin Hao to, you can think about it. Ning Lingjue was not in a hurry. He looked at Xinyuan Wuba and said, Wuba, what do you think? Give me some face and hand him over to me first, okay? Forgive me for not being able to comply. Xinyuan Wuba rejected coldly. Did he think he was stupid? Great Emperor Ning Wu and Battle King Daliao had negotiated to let the Ning family get the benefits first, but they wanted the Xinyuan family to let go of Shaohan. What would the Xinyuan family get then? It seemed that Ning Hongshuan's profiteering style had been inherited from his father. Wuba, you are becoming more and more like a hero. Unfortunately, if your father was here, he might be qualified to say this to me. But you? Haha. Ning Lingjue's words were filled with contempt. Did Xinyuan Wuba really think of himself as his father? How dare he challenge Ning Lingjue? It was not up to Xinyuan Wuba to decide whether to let him go or not. Ning Lingjue had the final say here. Of course, he did not directly snatch Shaohan. If he did, it would not benefit the Ning family. He then said to Duan Zhanfei, Brother Duan, if you agree to my conditions, it will not harm your northern borderline. It will even increase the overall strength of Western Liang. All three of us will be winners. Is it so hard to submit to the Ning family? To Ning Lingjue, Submitting to the Ning family might be a blessing for Qin Hao and Xiao Yi. Submit? Qin Hao's gaze turned cold. He asked, Uncle Duan, what did he say to you? Duan Zhanfei's body trembled. He, who was wearing the Demon King armor, felt a little powerless. He slowly turned his head and looked at Qin Hao with some guilt in his eyes. You will be the prime minister and Ning Hongxian will be the emperor. You will assist the descendants of the Ning family and build a great empire. And I, Daliao, will become his vassal and Western Liang will be his slave forever. Boom! Qin Hao's mind shook violently. What kind of condition was this? If he really agreed, Western Liang and Daliao would lose all dignity. Qin Hao was not the only one who was shocked. Xiaogua, K-Er, Gnawing Tube, Iron Bite, and other Danga members were furious. Even the Sword Sect, Sacred Hall, Arhut Palace, Li Yaxu, and Xianyuan Wuba were stunned by Ning Lingjue's move for a long time. Ning Lingjue made Qin Hao the prime minister and stayed in the Ningwu Empire to assist his son. From then on, the people of Western Liang would be his slaves. And once the Ning family gave the order, Daliao would fight for them unconditionally. If this really happened, the Ning family would dominate the southern region. How would the Li and Xianyuan family survive? In another 100 years, they might even be annexed. Old man, Li Yaxu could not help but shout angrily. He raised his head and looked straight at Ning Lingjue. Impressive. Xianyuan Wuba gave the heir a thumbs up. He felt that he was ruthless enough. The Xianyuan family only wanted Xiao Han's divine arrow and divine aura. But this Ning Lingjue wanted to control Xiao Yi's son-in-law, which was equivalent to enslaving Daliao. Think about it. If Qin Hao stayed in Ningwu, even if Xiao Han returned to become the empress, what would she do? This was completely strangling Western Liang and Daliao. I didn't force them. Do as you wish. Ning Lingjue smiled faintly. He did not care, even if Li Yaxu scolded him. In his opinion, with Qin Hao as the prime minister and his son as the empress, once they achieved immortal merits, Xiao Yi's son-in-law might even benefit. After all, he had the merit of supporting the empress. If you wholeheartedly assist Hongxian, he will definitely not treat you badly. As long as you nod your head now, I can even make sure that Xianyuan Wuba and his group do not return today. Ning Lingjue said. Just a moment ago, he was still full of righteousness, but now he was suffused with a demonic aura. Involuntarily, this sentence shocked Xianyuan Xiao and the other emperors of the Xianyuan family, and their faces turned pale. As for Xianyuan Wuba, he felt that Ning Lingjue, who was standing above him, was like a cloud of death that could swallow him up at any time. He was actually a little scared. Chapter 1298. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Ning Emperor, aren't you afraid of my emperor's revenge? Aren't you afraid that the Ningwu Empire will become a wasteland? Xianyuan Xiao yelled nervously. Several people gathered around Xianyuan Wuba. If things went wrong, they would send the crown prince away at all costs. But the 6 of them would probably all die here. Wuba, don't be nervous. This is just my imagination. It hasn't been implemented yet. Ning Lingjue said with a smile. Xianyuan Wuba saw this smile and found it extremely terrifying. Not nervous? Who wouldn't be nervous? This old man is so evil. However, on second thought, Ning Lingjue had his Tao of heaven and earth, and Xianyuan Wuba could also build a bridge for himself. Taking an unconventional approach, he focused his gaze on Duan Zhanfei and said, Your Excellency, Battle King, the Ning clan is not the only one in the southern region. My Xianyuan clan's foundation is not inferior to the Ning clan's. Why don't you join hands with me to resolve this situation? Xianyuan Wuba glanced at Qin Hao and said with contempt, That kid from Western Liang may have some talent, but Western Liang is a barren land. How can it compare to the rich land of southern Ao? My second brother is the legitimate heir of the Xianyuan royal family. He and the princess are a match made in heaven. In the future, he will be the king of equality, and the princess will be his wife. If you agree to let her marry my second brother, the Xianyuan family and the Shao family will unite by marriage. I swear that I will protect you and the princess." His words stirred up the crowd again. Everyone thought about it. This was an option for Duan Zhanfei. After all, the princess of Daliao had fallen into the hands of the Xianyuan family. Qin Hao was very talented, but there was no emperor in Western Liang. Compared to the huge resources of the Xianyuan family, he was like an ant looking at an elephant. In terms of identity, Xianyuan Wuying, as the second son of the proud emperor, could sit side by side with the emperor in the future. What did Qin Hao have? A little pavilion lord. So at first glance, Xianyuan Wuying was indeed more suitable for Shao Han than Qin Hao. Ning Lingjue's mouth twitched. He cursed in his heart. Xianyuan Wuba was very smart. "You want to unite by marriage with the princess of Daliao?" Duan Zhanfei replied. His demon-like, sharp eyes flashed slightly under his helmet. He snorted coldly. "Is your second brother worthy?" Boom! Everyone was shocked. Was he rejected? Duan Zhanfei didn't give the Xianyuan clan any face, rebuking the Xianyuan clan's ruler. Was he worthy? This was endless contempt. War king. Was the prince of the king of the three princes of the prince of the three emperor of southern region. And were the prince is his king translation king? Was prince. In Lungjuet, translation in translation underscore underscore S is translation T translation R S air S is translation S translation T air emperor. This was for that was for was. This was one S. A.S. with the highest talent in the divine wilderness continent. A.S. God could protect his daughter. He wouldn't be separated from his wife by those cold-hearted people in the nine heavens. In Xiao Yi's heart, he still had a little hope. He hoped that his son-in-law would one day be as powerful as the deity king. Maybe at that time, Xiao Yi would be able to see his wife again. In the little time he had left to live, he had this hope. And Qin Hao was the Qin Hao's. As for conquering the continent, sorry, Emperor Yuan of the mortal world is like an ant. Xiao Yi wanted to create a god. Qin Hao didn't know his father-in-law's plan. Xiao Yi's was too big. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. When Duan Zhanfei rejected him, saying, "Is Xianyuan Wuying worthy?" Qin Hao felt warm in his heart. Ha ha ha. Ning Hongxian couldn't help but burst into laughter. This was the first time someone questioned a prince of the Xianyuan family in the southern region. It was a merciless slap to the face. This warlord Daliao did a good job. His courage was astonishing. Of course, this was the result that Ning Lingjue and Ning Hongxian were most happy to see. They were really afraid that Duan Zhanfei wouldn't be able to resist the temptation and would agree. At this moment, Xianyuan Wuba's face was extremely ugly. How about it? Do you want to consider my father's suggestion? Ning Hongxian gazed at Qin Hao with a teasing look in his eyes. He had regained his high and mighty aura. Since the warlord rejected Xianyuan Wuba, the only path left was the Ning family. If not, how could he save Shao Han? Qin Hao didn't have a second choice. I'll be the prime minister, and you'll be the emperor? Qin Hao looked at Ning Hongxian calmly. It's just a title. If you sincerely assist me, you'll be my brother in the future. Ning Hongxian smiled. Qin Hao's talent had been recognized by many experts in the southern region. He wasn't inferior to Shou Wuk and Yu Qianyang. He was very reliable. Especially in alchemy, he would be an inexhaustible treasure for the Ning family in the future. Are you worthy? Before Qin Hao could answer, the imperial trainer spoke first. In the 5,000 years of the divine wilderness, no one could surpass Qin Hao in terms of alchemy. In the past, Dinda dominated the East continent. Now, Ning Hongxian was shameless enough to say that when others wanted to take him as their minister. What a joke. How can a servant interrupt when a master is talking? Ning Hongxian stared at the imperial trainer with a gloomy look. Qin Hao took a step forward and stood between them. He smiled and said to Ning Hongxian, "I've made up my mind. What do you think?" Ning Hongxian was delighted. "Who do you think you are to be my emperor?" Qin Hao replied with a smile. The imperial trainer also smiled at Ning Hongshuan's attitude. Emperor? In Denda's eyes, there was no emperor in the world. Not to mention the emperor, Ning Hongxian still wasn't qualified to be called brother. Are you sure you want to reply in this way? Ning Hongshuan's face was terrifyingly gloomy. It was as if a volcano was erupting in his heart. Someone dared to ask him, "Who am I, Ning Hongxian, to my face? Get out of my sight." Qin Hao didn't want to look at this person anymore. Thump! Everyone felt as if a string in their heart had been pulled taut. Qin Hao and Duan Zhanfei both chose the third option. They didn't choose the Xianyuan family or the Ning family. It was a dead end. Clap, clap, clap. Applause resounded rhythmically above everyone's head. Everyone looked up and saw Ning Lingjue. What a pair of loyal and affectionate son-in-laws. However, they seem to be too stupid. Since that's the case, do as you please. Ning Lingjue's body rose higher into the sky. As he flew, he shouted coldly at Xianyuan Wuba, "Settle it yourselves. Life and death are up to the heavens. However, if anyone dares to harm my Golden Light City, even if it's just a grain of sand, I will make sure he dies without a complete corpse." At the end, he added that the people of Western Liang and Northern Borderline needed to be taught a lesson. As soon as he said this, everyone's heart trembled. Ning Lingjue was going to let the Xianyuan family slaughter Dan Gu and the others. Many experts looked at Qin Hao with pity. However, other than sighing, they could only sigh. Bang! A loud explosion resounded. Almost as soon as Ning Lingjue finished speaking, the 8 pavilions representing the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects at the back of the auction house were blown to smithereens by this powerful force. At this moment, everyone's expression became very interesting. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Ning Lingjue himself. He had just declared that if Duan Zhanfei and Xianyuan Wuba fought, no one was allowed to harm the Ning family's territory. No matter which side it was, they would all die without a complete corpse. However, someone actually dared to destroy his 8 pavilions in public as a demonstration. This explosion was too violent and sudden. Even Xianyuan Wuba couldn't help but be shocked, afraid that it was done by the people of the Xianyuan family. As for Ning Lingjue, he released his 9-star Emperor's aura. In the void, he glanced around, and a terrifying, endless storm was formed in an instant, rushing towards the 8 pavilions. In the void, there was a strong platinum flame. However, when this invisible storm arrived, it was as if it had fallen into a deep quagmire without any ripples. Then, everyone saw a graceful figure from afar. Surrounded by a large group of women, she slowly walked over. This graceful figure emitted a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Ning Lingjue, you are so impressive. Not only are you impressive, but you are also emitting a wave of nauseating energy. A figure wearing a black veil stepped into the hall. The black veil was as thin as a cicada's wings. Under the clothes, the woman's alluring figure could be clearly seen. This woman was tall and slender. Her breasts were swollen, which made people's noses bleed and their imaginations run wild. However, at this moment, no one dared to look in that direction. They didn't even dare to take a look. People as strong as the Sword Sect's martial granduncle, the Sacred Palace's Yang Tai, the Xianyuan family's elder Xianyuan Xiu, Xianyuan Wuba, Li Yaxu, and the others were all suppressed by the woman's aura. As if they were ashamed of their inferiority, they lowered their heads deeply. Incomparable respect gushed out from their hearts, but they didn't dare to blaspheme. Palace Lord Yi? Ning Lingjue was very surprised. The woman before him had the same cultivation as him. They were both 9-star great emperors. He immediately glanced at Ning Hongxian, his eyes full of blame. Today was the Ning family's auction ceremony, and the Palace Lord of the Night Azura Palace, one of the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects, was actually coming personally. Why didn't he tell him? However, in the eyes of the other 9-star great emperors, it was like a joke. You don't have to glare at Ning Hongxian. As a 9-star great emperor, you actually didn't notice me. Is it because your cultivation has regressed? Or is it because you're too arrogant to the point where you can't extricate yourself? Yi Ninghong's voice was filled with sarcasm. Her voice was extremely seductive and could easily make a young man fall for her. At this moment, she was also wearing a thin black veil on her face. Her face couldn't be seen clearly, but it was rumored that Yi Ninghong was the #1 great empress of the southern region and also the #1 beauty. Palace Lord Yi, you must be joking. Palace Lord Yi's cultivation might have improved a lot. You must have stepped into the second level of the 9-star Great Emperor realm. Ning Lingjue was a little embarrassed, and his skin was extremely thick. Of course, he couldn't fulfill the promise of dying without a complete corpse on Yi Ninghong. However, Yi Ninghong's appearance made Ning Lingjue very confused. Could it be that she only wanted to mock them? The #1 beauty of the southern region probably didn't have the time to do that. Senior Yi, Qin Hao took the initiative to step forward and bowed slightly. Immediately after, his eyes met with the old demon, who was beside Yi Ninghong, and both of them smiled. Of course, Duan Zhanfei alone couldn't save Xiaohan. The reason why Qin Hao was so calm was that the Night Azura Palace hadn't appeared yet. At this moment, it was the right time for Palace Lord Yi to appear. Young Master Qin, I don't deserve to be called senior. What made everyone's eyes pop out was that the 9-star Great Empress, Yi Ninghong, quickly returned the bow to Qin Hao. Her bow was even lower than Qin Hao's. Not to mention others, even Ning Lingjue couldn't get used to this scene. He opened his eyes wide and found it unbelievable. After all, even he wasn't qualified to receive such a bow from Yi Ninghong. In a chapter. Chapter 1299. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations War of the Thearchs. The atmosphere was a little strange. Although the 9-star Great Emperor was returning the greeting, it still overturned everyone's view of the world. Ning Hongxian frowned and glanced at the old demon. The middle-aged man was the Night Luo Palace's sacred ruler and the man of the southern region's first empress. The old demon had borrowed 3 million earth crystals from Qin Hao during the auction to help him suppress the Tangdu and seize the ownership rights of the ancient beasts. He had also said that he had a good impression of Qin Hao. Could the old demon be the problem? Even so, Yi Ninghong wouldn't lower herself to return the greeting to Qin Hao. After all, the difference between their statuses was like heaven and earth. The pressure in Xianyuan Wuba's heart suddenly increased. It was difficult for ordinary martialists to catch the eye of the arch. Among the Thearchs, there was a hierarchy, and the 9-star Great Emperor was the most important. He looked down on Qin Hao, just like how Yi Ninghong couldn't be bothered with him. However, how could he not be nervous when the 9-star Great Empress returned the greeting to Qin Hao? As the next ruler of the southern region, Xianyuan Wuba could infer a lot of information from the actions of others. Yi Ninghong's actions had already revealed an extremely dangerous signal to the Xianyuan family. If Qin Hao attached himself to her, would Western Yang have no arch? It didn't matter. Yi Ninghong alone could beat 10 Thearchs. Master, Hong, don't be humble with each other. Deal with this matter first. There will be a lot of time to communicate in the future. The old demon said. His eyes, which were usually filled with wretchedness, were now fixed on Xianyuan Wuba like sharp swords that could slay enemies. Did he really think that the southern region's Night Palace Master was so courteous to Qin Hao because of his relationship? Wrong. Although the old demon's relationship was important, it wasn't the only reason. Qin Hao's identity was the main reason. Who was Qin Hao? 600 years ago, Dendi of the East Continent stood at the pinnacle of the continent. He was known as the most terrifying 9-star Great Emperor, comparable to the current sunset battle god. Just as Xianyuan Wuba had said, there was a hierarchy within the Monarch realm. 9 stars were the highest, and those below the title of Great Emperor were all ants. There was no difference between a weak monarch or a primitive emperor. However, within the 9 stars, there were also differences between the strong and the weak. In fact, at Yi Ninghong's and Ning Lingjue's level, the higher their cultivation, the more they could sense the strength of a 9-star Great Monarch. The 9-star Monarch realm was divided into several realms. The strongest realm was close to the divine realm. It was just like how Ning Lingjue had praised Palace Master Yi, asking if he had broken through the second level of the 9-star Emperor realm. Of course, those were just empty words. Actually, he knew that Yi Ninghong hadn't broken it, and so had Ning Lingjue. However, Yi Ninghong was clear that 600 years ago, Qin Hao, who had killed 2 emperors of the Sacred Hall with a single arrow, was already infinitely close to the final realm of the 9-star Emperor realm. Perhaps with just a small step forward, the divine wilderness continent could give birth to a god. As for Qin Hao's secret, only Dog Spirit and the old demon knew about it. Xiaohan, Xiaogua, and the others didn't know about it. Otherwise, how could the Shiliang Blood Emperor, who was also in the Monarch realm, be willing to be Qin Hao's Monarch servant and treat him as his Monarch master? In the pavilion, the old demon told Yi Ninghong this secret. She was already the old demon's woman, so she could be completely trusted. When Yi Ninghong faced Qin Hao, the Colossus, who was above the 9-star Great Emperor realm, her sense of inferiority was naturally reflected. If Dendi was willing to guide her in the future, it wouldn't be a dream for Yi Ninghong to break through the second level. In fact, her achievements would be even higher. This was the main reason why she lowered her attitude, because Qin Hao himself had an extremely terrifying weight. Dendi was the only person in the divine wilderness who had reached the last level of the Monarch realm. The old demon's wretched gaze immediately crushed the weakest barrier in Xianyuan Wuba's heart. He was dumbfounded and said absent-mindedly, "It's over." As soon as he said this, everyone finally realized that the problem was indeed with the old demon. That middle-aged man was Qin Hao's servant, and this servant was incomparably awesome. He had slept with the #1 empress of the southern region. The Sword Sect's Elder Meng, Yang Tai, Li Yaxu, and the others were all dumbfounded. They were speechless. All right, then let's deal with this matter first. Yi Ninghong's nightingale-like laughter came from under her veil. Then, she looked at Ning Lingjue, who was in midair. What did you just say? The Ning family doesn't care about this matter? All right, I'll take care of it. Bang! This sentence was like a ruthless brick that fell from the sky, ruthlessly falling on Xianyuan Wuba's head, smashing him so hard that he staggered backward. At this time, the entire sky seemed to be gradually dimming. An invisible and mighty emperor's aura covered the entire Golden Light City. Everyone knew that Yi Ninghong's 9-star emperor's intent had been released. In the southern region, she might not be the strongest Emperor Yuan. In a head-on confrontation, she might not even be able to defeat Ning Lingjue. But with the unpredictable power of the Night Luo Palace, even if the enemy fled to the ends of the world, they would be killed invisibly thousands of miles away. She was undoubtedly the most troublesome Emperor Yuan. To be honest, Xianyuan Shou of the Xianyuan family would rather be killed by Great Emperor Ning Wu's palm than escape with a fluke mentality. If he were to die under Yi Ninghong's spell inexplicably, it would be too sullen. And if the 6 of them worked together, they might be able to buy a few seconds in front of Ning Lingjue, allowing Xianyuan Wuba to escape. However, facing Yi Ninghong, even if Xianyuan Wuba escaped, he wouldn't be able to escape death. Palace Master Yi, what do you want to do? Xianyuan Xiu let out a horrified cry. His pale face was about to collapse. Xianyuan Wuba and the others also retreated repeatedly. Let him go or die. Yi Ninghong spat out coldly. Screech. Following her words, above the void, a giant beast that was not inferior to the 8-winged black dragon descended. It covered the sky and the sun, and black gas lingered around it, causing the world of Golden Light City to become even darker. Everyone raised their heads and could faintly see an 8-winged giant bird flying freely in the black fog, exuding a terrifying beast emperor aura. It was Yi Ninghong's mount, the guardian divine beast of the Night Luo Palace, the 8-winged demon Oriole. This demon Oriole was said to be the mount of the previous Night Luo Palace Master, and it was later passed down to Yi Ninghong. Its strength was infinitely close to a 9-star beast emperor, and it was even stronger than the Li family's Kuan Peng and the Xianyuan family's 8-winged black dragon, with the demon Oriole cooperating with Yi Ninghong. Even if Ning Longjue wanted to intervene, he couldn't stop them at all. But the old demon, who always liked to be in the limelight, didn't show off at this time. On the contrary, he was incomparably solemn. Of course, he knew that if Yi Ninghong interfered in this matter, even if she temporarily suppressed the Xianyuan family, she would undoubtedly completely offend them, including the Ning family. In the future, the disciples of the Night Luo Palace would be in danger in the southern region. Worse still, the Night Luo Palace might even face the crisis of being exterminated by the Ning family and Xianyuan family. The old demon had tricked his woman, but Su Yongfu had no choice. Palace Master Yi, wantonly killing people in my Ning Wu Empire. I'm afraid this isn't good, right? Ning Longjue's expression was very cold. As the great emperor of Ning Wu, he could say that he wouldn't interfere in this matter. However, Golden Light City belonged to the Ning family, and he couldn't just watch Yi Ninghong act arrogantly in the Ning Wu Empire. You want to interfere now? Yi Ninghong turned back and looked at Ning Longjue. Unfortunately, you can't interfere even if you want to. Was she pressured? Of course. She might even ruin her master's foundation. However, if she gave herself to the old demon, she would have to follow him and cripple her cultivation without any complaints or regrets. At that time, an even more terrifying power of the Law of Darkness descended on Golden Light City. In front of everyone's eyes, it was difficult to see a figure within 3 meters, not to mention the weak disciples of the various sects. Even the other Emperor-level experts couldn't resist Yi Ninghong's power of the Law of Darkness. Trapped in this boundless world of darkness, they felt as if they were abandoned by the world, and their hair stood on end. Within the Law of Darkness, Yi Ninghong could be said to be invincible. What if the old man wants to interfere? Suddenly, a shout reverberated in the void. This shout was like the roar of a raging wind, and in one fell swoop, all the haze in Golden Light City dissipated. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1300. Primordial Alchemy, Supremacy. It was as if it had come from ancient times. With the power of the Great Path, it broke Palace Master Ye's dark rules and brought Golden Light City back to life. Above the void, the 8-winged demon Oriole seemed to be caught by an invisible giant hand. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not escape from its original position. The mighty voice spread. Every corner of Golden Light City was filled with a terrifying ancient aura. It was as if heaven and earth were completely suppressed. Ning Songsong. Yi Ninghong looked at the sky. Her heart trembled, and she said solemnly, Ning Songsong, the patriarch of the martial Ning Empire, an ancient Yuan emperor who had stepped into the second realm of the 9-star Monarch stage. This time it was troublesome. The scene seemed to be frozen. Many Monarch stage masters did not dare to act rashly. To be precise, they were intimidated by the ancient voice. Perhaps the disciples of the various sects did not know who this person was. They only felt that the owner of the ancient voice was very terrifying. However, every Monarch stage master present did not forget the 3 words Ning Songsong. These 3 words represented the previous era of the southern region and were extremely important. The ancient Yuan emperor of the Ning family, the Li family's patriarch, the Xianyuan family's patriarch, Xianyuan Wuqian, Palace Master Ye's master, the Demon Knight Emperor, and the 2 emperors of the Blazing Sun Temple were equally famous. This group of people was on par with Dendi and the Sunset Battle God in the East Continent. How could they not be terrifying? Perhaps in the eyes of the disciples of the various sects, the southern region was controlled by the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects. The various sect masters and emperors were the sky above the warriors of the southern region. But in fact, when something big happened, it was still this group of ancient Yuan emperors who were in charge. Now, the Demon Knight Emperor's lifespan was exhausted, and the 2 emperors of the sacred temple were killed. Only the Li family, the Xianyuan family, and the Ning family were left. The appearance of any one of them was enough to change the situation in an instant. The scene fell into silence. No one dared to make a sound. They had to hold their farts, because no one present was qualified to talk to Ning Songsong. Even the first empress of the southern region was only a junior in front of him. Young master, it's patriarch Ning Songsong. In the audience seats at the back of the crowd, the two green-robed emperor's servants trembled slightly with excitement. In terms of seniority, Ning Songsong was Songsong. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. In the entire Ning clan, his status was far above that of a refined scholar. Only the living ancestor of the Ning family in the Great Ding Duchy could compare to him. The moment he appeared, he restrained Palace Master Yi and sent word that he was going to interfere in today's matter. There was no need to speak of this goal. It was obvious that Knight Azura Palace was not allowed to interfere. The advantage that Qin Hao had just obtained fell back into defeat. What should we do, young master? Little brother Qin might die. Ning Kong said anxiously. The scholarly man looked into Ding's direction. He pondered for a few seconds and said helplessly, I'm afraid it's too late to call for help. Moreover, I can't summon the patriarch with just a word. Try your best. If the two of you work together and save him from the chaos, it shouldn't be too difficult. Saving Qin Hao was the best that Ning Kong and Ning Lai could do together. Then, they would bring him back to the Ding. At that time, Xianyuan Wutian and Ning Songsong would come. As long as the scholarly man insisted on not handing over Qin Hao, they wouldn't dare to do anything to the Ding. However, Xiaohua, Kerr, Duan Zhanfei, and even Dan Ge would probably all be buried here. The Night Princess and the old demon wouldn't be in a good situation either. Yes, Ning Kong and Ning Lai nodded. The two of them admired Qin Hao's talent and temperament. Moreover, this person was the benefactor of the Ning family to begin with. Even though he hadn't shown the slightest bit of grace to their third bloodline, he was still the benefactor of the Ning family. Although he didn't show any kindness to the third lineage, the Ning family still owed him. At this moment, Ning Kong and Ning Lai circulated their emperor stage power of law and locked their eyes in Yi Ninghong's direction. Once the battle started, they would save Qin Hao and leave as quickly as possible. Senior Ning, are you bullying my master because he's no longer alive? Yi Ninghong forced herself to remain calm as she looked at the struggling eight-winged demon Oriole in the void. However, her heart fell into a bottomless abyss. She knew that even if she joined forces with the eight-winged demon Oriole, they wouldn't be able to shake Ning Songsong, who had stepped into the second realm. Old demon Yi is dead. Old man lost an old friend. I'm also very sad. However, the Ning family chose not to interfere in today's matter. This is already a great favor to Western Liang and Northern Borderline. As a senior of the Southern region, Old Man hopes that the Night Luo Palace won't fall into enemy hands. Including all the forces here, don't interfere. In the void, an aged voice rang out, carrying with it an irresistible command. Everyone guessed that Ninglung wouldn't interfere in this matter before, and Palace Master you would. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. To the Ning family, interfering wasn't too much because the Night Luo Palace was only targeting the Xianyuan family. However, at this moment, the patriarch of the Ning family appeared and didn't allow Palace Master Yi to interfere. It was obvious that he was deliberately suppressing Qin Hao and making him lose his most powerful backer. This could be considered as a response to the "Who do you think you are?" After all, Ning Hongxian was Ning Songsong's descendant, and Qin Hao had trampled on the Ning family. Qin Hao naturally understood this point, but he didn't regret making him the prime minister and making Ning Hongxian the emperor. If he could do it all over again, he would still say, "Who do you think you are?" Actually, Old Man is doing this for your own good. Previously, the coiling dragon wonder at the source of the South River caused a huge commotion in the southern region. I'm sure everyone has heard about it. Ning Songsong's voice sounded in the void again. The coiling dragon peak at the source of the South River collapsed, causing heavy casualties among the disciples of the various sects. If that's all, it's fine. However, losing the coiling dragon wonder is definitely a disaster for the martial artists of the southern region. It had been 800 years since the disciples of the various sects of the southern region went to climb the coiling dragon peak to stimulate their potential. Once the wonder was destroyed, it was equivalent to cutting off a path for the disciples of the various sects to increase their cultivation. Of course, the loss was not small. And I heard that the creator of the wonder, the Spirit Emperor, appeared and bestowed his power of inheritance and the dragon spirit technique to a fated person present, someone else said with a hint of jealousy. That's right. Ning Songsong's voice replied in the void. The descendant of the Golden Light City branch of the Ning family was escorted back safely by this fated person. The Transcendent once said that it was his master who received the Spirit Emperor's inheritance. In fact, from a personal standpoint, the old man felt guilty in his heart. He felt guilty toward this fated person. However, the coiling dragon wonder belongs to the people of the southern region. It's not unique to the Ning family. For the past 800 years, it has benefited all the sects and clans. I, Ning Songsong, am not a heartless person. However, I can't watch the Spirit Emperor's inheritance be taken away by an outsider and become the treasure of Western Liang. Therefore, I told him not to interfere in this matter. This is already the most that the Ning family can do. Young Pavilion Master Qin, you should understand the old man's actions, right? The voice in the void was like a ruthless sword that stabbed at Qin Hao's position. It pushed him to the heart of the storm and became the target of public criticism. End of chapter. Chapter 1301. Whose inheritance? Qin Hao stood on the coiling dragon, crossed 8 platforms, and broke all records. He found the dragon eye and opened the hidden dragon's secret realm with his peak emperor's will. Then, the mountain collapsed, and the spirit of the formation came out. It took the power of the essence crystal mountain into Qin Hao's body and turned into the dragon spirit, forming the Dharma idol. Treasures always belonged to those who were strong. It had nothing to do with one's realm. Besides, the coiling dragon wonder was created by the Spirit Emperor. Qin Hao opened the hidden dragon secret realm for Li Wanji, and the dragon spirit was a gift from the other party to help Qin Hao return to the Emperor realm. As for the final evolution of the Dharma idol into another killer move, it was Qin Hao's own choice. However, regardless of which reason it was, whether it was personal or by chance, Qin Hao had never done anything outrageous to the sects of the southern domain. If the dragon spirit was the ultimate treasure of any sect, and Qin Hao took it, he had a reason to return it. However, Qin Hao took it, and it was a gift from the Spirit Emperor himself. What did it have to do with the southern region? What did it have to do with the Ning family? All of this seemed to be Ning Songsong's magnanimity. In fact, he made Qin Hao the public enemy of the southern region. His heart was extremely vicious. After all, he didn't allow Sect Master Yi to interfere before. The Nightnet Palace helped Qin Hao fight against the Xianyuan family. What did it have to do with the Ning family? Ning Songsong made it clear that he wanted Qin Hao dead. If he didn't do anything, he would be killing him without spilling blood. No, master, I didn't say. In the distance, Ning Chaofan hurriedly defended himself. As soon as he spoke, the power that suppressed heaven and earth in the void was immediately filled with great killing intent. It was like the mouth of a fierce beast that wanted to swallow him whole. Transcendent. Qin Hao interrupted him, and then he looked at Ning Chaofan, who was filled with powerlessness, and said, "Stick to your duty and live on peacefully." These words conveyed Qin Hao's incomparable trust. As long as Qin Hao was alive, he would not interfere. Ning Chaofan's eyes turned red, even though he was the young lord of Golden Light City. How could he compare to a direct descendant? Not to mention the old ancestor of the Ning family. Even if he wanted to see Ning Lingjue, he would have to bow 3 times and kowtow 9 times. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He simply didn't have the chance to talk to the person in power. And teacher understood all of this. The ancestor of the Ning family had framed him, but his teacher still believed him. Moreover, from the very beginning, he had severed their master-disciple relationship and given him the treasured armor that he had always dreamed of. However, the fierce, murderous aura emitted by the sect masters was not something that the weak Yuan monarchs like Nibbling Tube and Biting Iron could withstand. Even Syogwa, who had followed Qin Hao and seen countless battles and experienced many life and death situations, had never faced such a terrifying situation. A thought of death crept into his heart. Ha! Qin Hao's eyes swept across every face and remembered them. He said calmly and coldly, "Are you trying to scare me? You are still too inexperienced. Come on. Master, let's go. We will open up a bloody path for you." The old demon was completely crazy. He fully unleashed his martial emperor cultivation, and a murderous aura filled the air. "I can't change the present. However, I can give the sect a glorious future. Disciples kill." Palace Master Yi shouted sorrowfully. At this moment, the rules of darkness bloomed. The rules of darkness merged with the murderous aura of the old demon. It faintly changed and evolved into an even more terrifying force. "Stubborn. Do you want her to die in Ning Wu's hands?" In the void, Ning Songsong shouted angrily. Along with this, the sound of the 8-winged demon Oriole's bones cracking shook the heavens and earth. She let out a painful cry. "You!" Palace Master Yi looked at the sky. The 8-winged demon Oriole was the Night Demon Emperor's mount. Rather than a mount, it was more accurate to say that she was the Emperor's confidant. Now that the Night Demon was dead, Mo Ying was Yi Ninghong's only elder. Even so, Yi Ninghong still cried and shouted, "Kill!" "Ninghong, I am proud of you," Mo Ying said. Now that the Night Demon was dead, she should have followed him. It was a pity that she could not witness his sect reaching a more glorious peak. However, Mo Ying knew that this day would not be too far away. At this moment, the terrifying Beast Emperor's deathly aura filled the void. The 8-winged demon Oriole was going to self-destruct. Perhaps this was the only way to injure Ning Songsong. "Li Wanji, are you still not coming out?" Qin Hao was furious and let out a dragon's roar. He was not afraid if he was alone. However, he could not bear to see others being burdened by him. Boom! This roar shook the heavens and earth. Time and space froze. Everyone who wanted to kill stopped their actions, including the self-destructing demon Oriole and Ning Songsong, who had trapped her. Li Wanji? There was no one who didn't know this name. Since the day the coiling dragon wonder collapsed, this name had spread throughout the southern region. It had far surpassed the prestige of this person when he climbed the 7 coiling dragon's wonder. This was because he was the sole emperor. Qin Hao shouted Li Wanji's name. Could it be that the sole emperor was still alive? The 9 heavens divine emperor. Chapter 1302. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The hearts of the crowd trembled as their gazes followed the direction Qin Hao was looking at. Behind the crowd, in an inconspicuous spot, there was a stooped figure carrying a huge bag on his shoulder, trying to leave quietly. Everyone knew this person's face. Even the disciples of the sect knew who he was. It was Master Li Beitong, who had been famous in the auction world for more than 200 years and was highly respected. He was invited by the Ning family to preside over the auction. However, the person Qin Hao called out was Li Wanji. His eyes were fixed on Li Beitong. Could it be that there was a significant connection between the two? Everyone was confused. Although he was confused, even a fool could see that Master Li wanted to run away. But when he was shouted at by Qin Hao, his sneaky steps involuntarily stopped. Turning around, Li Beitong wanted to cry, but had no tears. His eyes were filled with resentment towards Qin Hao. "Isn't it good for you to shoulder it alone?" Li Beitong thought that Qin Hao was destined to be miserable. Why drag him down with him? He was not afraid of anyone here, but once his identity was revealed, he would not be able to live peacefully in the future. As the Spirit Emperor, how can you be unconcerned and ignore the lives of others? Qin Hao said angrily. Boom! As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Li Beitong was the Spirit Emperor? How was that possible? Master Li, Ning Hongxian was so shocked that his soul seemed to fly into the sky. He was the one who invited Li Beitong. If Li Beitong was really Li Wanji, it would be too shocking. What about you? You are a bunch of sanctimonious people. You and your father, your ancestors, you are all the same. Spit. Li Beitong spat. In front of everyone, his stooped body gradually straightened. The wrinkles on his face disappeared, and his skin returned to normal. In an instant, he looked like a young man in his 20s. However, his skin was too white and his eyes were slightly sunken. His original plan was to not show up. If Palace Master Yi did not show up, he would use a few enchantment techniques to stir up chaos and create a gust of wind that would sweep Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Dan Gu away safely. However, the situation changed more and more. Ning Lingjue appeared, and Palace Master Yi used his arrogance to lure out Ning Songsong. Gradually, they were out of Li Beitong. The old man of the Ning family was not easy to deal with. He had wanted to leave first, but he had left a trick to help Qin Hao to success. That would depend on Qin's. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Qin Hao translation. Come, he was the Li Beitong. It is he. There were many people present who had seen him at the Coiling Dragon Wonder. After all, Li Wanji had stepped on 7 wheels in a row, so they immediately recognized him. I still have 900 years of life. Even if your ancestor dies, I will not die. Li Wanji cursed, after which he glanced at Ning Lingjue. The Coiling Dragon Grand Formation belongs to me. I can give it to whoever I want. Why is it that in the mouth of the Ning clan, it's a public property in the southern region? How dare you instigate the crowd? Do you want it? I will give it to you. Whoosh! Li Beitong lifted the huge bag on his back and threw it at Ning Lingjue. Of course, he did not want this bag. He could kill Great Emperor Ning Wu with it. The bag opened in the air. From the opening, hundreds of sharp blades with cold light fell out. They were all Emperor artifacts. There were also all kinds of flying demonic beasts. Apart from that, there were also artifacts and glittering primordial crystal stones. The whole sky was filled with treasures. It was a spectacular sight. These were all items for this auction. Li Beitong had joined the auction as Li Wanji. He wanted to take them all. He had even prepared a huge Qingquan bag. Unfortunately, his identity was exposed by Qin Hao. He had to give it up. In an instant, these treasures, demonic beasts, and primordial crystal stones fell on the various sections. The scene was instantly chaotic. Moreover, many cultivators with quick reflexes rushed in and began to snatch the treasures, causing the scene to be even more chaotic. Li Wanji, my Xinyuan family is absolutely irreconcilable with you. Hand over your life. Seeing this, Xinyuan Xiao did not need to give an order. The 6 elders of the Xinyuan family all had a tacit understanding. They all ignited their emperor intent laws and gathered the great Tao gravity together. It was as if the void was collapsing as it descended on Li Wanji's head. F*CK, your Xinyuan family. Did I steal from you, snatch from you, or sleep with your grandmother? Li Wanji screamed again and again. Yes, he was a 9-star great emperor, but he had not stepped into the second realm. He was also the weakest among the 9-star great emperors. After all, he was an enchanter and was not good at fierce battles. And in front of him, the 6 emperors of the Xinyuan family attacked him without saying a word, as if they had mad cow disease. Even if Li Wanji could block them, he would not do so without paying a price. And he would not be stupid enough to risk his life with the Xinyuan family. He tore a crack in the void and drilled in. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He went in. Oh, you damn dog, if I don't kill you today. Old man's surname is not Xinyuan. Chase after him. Xinyuan Xiozhen was so anxious that his eyes turned red. That sentence of sleeping with your family's old grandmother had deeply pierced his sore spot. Chapter 1303. Translator. Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo, Studio Hold Her Hand. Spear shadows and fist radiance intertwined as the two emperors clashed. The terrifying power swept across everything, and the ground seemed to be sinking. Golden Light City couldn't withstand it. Those who destroy my Golden Light City will be killed without mercy, Ning Lungjue shouted. Golden Light City was not only the biggest trading city in the southern region, but it was also strategically located. If the city was destroyed, the imperial capital would lose its buffer zone, which would be equivalent to throwing its back to the Sword Sect and Sacred Palace. It was extremely dangerous. But at this moment, Ning Lingjue didn't stop them from fighting. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at Xiao Han's direction. He stepped on the void and went straight down. Obviously, he hadn't given up. He wanted to threaten Xiao Han and force Qin Hao and Duan Zhanfei to submit to him. Marshal Ning would definitely prosper. Although he didn't stop them, Duan Zhanfei and Xianyuan Wuba immediately turned into dazzling flowing light and soared into the sky. In the sky, the two started fighting again. A 9-star Great Emperor was enough to make them wary. No one dared to provoke Ning Lingjue. But at this moment, Ning Lingjue wanted to capture Xiao Han. How could Yi Ninghong let him do as he wished? The power of the Dark Rule merged with the old demon's murderous aura. The rule seemed to have been sublimated and turned into an even more terrifying power. In the void, the rule power formed black thunderbolts that flashed and pierced towards Ning Lingjue like a spear. Ning Lingjue was immediately blocked and could only turn around to face the attack. "Master, hurry!" the old demon shouted. He was in the Origin Emperor realm and forcefully merged the power of the murderous aura into Yi Ninghong's rule power. He wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Qin Hao and the Imperial Censor looked at each other. With a wave of his arm, Xianyuan Feng was thrown towards Gnawing Tube and rushed towards Xianyuan Wuying. "Stop them," Xianyuan Wuying ordered. The Xianyuan family had many experts following them and still had a huge advantage. But his son Xianyuan Feng was restrained, which made him extremely worried. "Come and fight." A strong figure stepped out from the team. It was Xianyuan Wuyao. As a top Emperor Stage Master, he had fought with the Imperial Censor earlier, and both of them were evenly matched. When he saw the other party rushing toward him, his competitive spirit was ignited. He formed a spell with both hands and threw an arc blade of primordial chi with a golden luster at the other party. "I'll hold him off," the Imperial Censor said to Qin Hao. His combat power was limited, so he could only rely on Qin how to deal with the rest. At this time, behind Xianyuan Wuyao, there were more than 10 venerable level experts who were following him. They were all intercepting Qin Hao. Suddenly, a cold voice was heard. Then, Yu Qinyang, who was about to make a move, realized that everyone in front of him had completely disappeared. He was no longer in Golden Light City. Around him was a world of nothingness. In this world, endless sword chimes reverberated. Then, an arrogant figure stepped forward in front of him. "Showuk." Yu Qinyang's heart trembled. Of course, he knew that he had fallen into the other party's sword intent realm. It was obvious that he couldn't avoid this battle. In an instant, inside the Nihility sword realm, raging flames soared into the sky, and tens of thousands of sword chimes reverberated in the air. This was the battle between the number 1 prodigy of the southern region. Showuk. Qin Hao's vast emperor's consciousness spread out and clearly explored the entire battlefield. Yu Qinyang had been blocked by Showuk and now owed the sword sect a favor. Die. At that moment, the furnace behind him roared with a roar and a scorching heat wave. Tang Xingqian lifted the furnace and smashed it heavily on Qin Hao's back. Suddenly, flames exploded and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. This blow didn't seem like it had hit a person's body at all. It was more like it had hit a hard steel plate. Puffed. A flash of sword light flashed in front of Tang Xingqian's eyes. Then, he found it more and more difficult to breathe. His primordial soul had already dissipated in the sword light. He clutched his throat with both hands and looked at the figure in front of him that was getting farther and farther away. That figure had slashed at him with his sword, but didn't even turn around to look at him. How sad was that? Before this, He had mocked him for being qualified to suppress the southern region. Now, Tang Xingqian finally understood Qin Hao's qualifications. However, from now on, he would never see the wonderful world or smell the flowers of the southern region. Xingqian, my nephew. Tang Du looked at the young man who had fallen to the ground full of vitality. That was supposed to be a young man who would achieve great things in the future and shoulder the hope of the herbal medicine hall. Now, Qin Hao had cruelly slit his throat. Qin Hao continued to move forward. Tang Xingqian's death and Tang Du's cries had nothing to do with him. In his eyes, there was only Xiao Han. He was getting closer and closer. Perhaps he could take a small step forward and hold Xiao Han's hand. However, the flies around him that he couldn't kill were really annoying. They were so noisy that his head was buzzing. In the distance, Caiogua looked at Qin Hao, who was trapped in the attacks of primordial qi. Two streams of hot tears flowed out of his eyes. At this moment, Qin Hao was completely buried by the Xianyuan family spells. However, he didn't care at all. He faced the endless attacks above his head and pressed forward. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1305. Ha ha ha. Xianyuan Wuying withdrew from the battle with Qing Lao. He looked back and saw that Qin Hao had been stabbed 4 times. He laughed in satisfaction and mocked coldly. You want to save someone with this little ability? Or die? He had placed 4 flower vases by Xiao Han's side, just for the sake of pleasing the eye? No, they were also extremely talented clansmen of the Xianyuan clan. They were there to prevent such a scene. Qin Hao had thrown himself into the trap. In an instant, countless experts stopped moving. Their hearts seemed to have stopped beating as well. They stared blankly at the figure that was already standing in front of Xiao Han. Had he failed in the end? Even though his talent was peerless, and he possessed the aura of an emperor that suppressed the southern region, he was invincible under the emperor realm. But in the end, he had stopped in front of his true love. He was only a hair's breadth away. How cruel! A boundless sense of tragedy surged from everyone's hearts to their bodies. In order to help him, many experts of the southern region had taken the pressure and joined in. But he had still failed. Today, not only had everyone participated in Ning Wu's grand auction that was held once every 5 years, but they had also witnessed the birth and fall of a genius. No, perhaps after today, he should be called a peerless genius. His alchemy, body refinement, vitality, sword Dao, and control of fire were all proficient. He had amazed the experts of various sections. No one of his age in the southern region could compete with him. They were not even worthy of competing with him. Even if there were outstanding geniuses like Shou Wuk and Yu Qianyang, there was no one in the southern region who could gather so many ultimate skills and reach Qin Hao's level. For the divine wilderness continent, Qin Hao's fall was a tragedy. However, at this moment, the 4 maidservants who had stabbed Qin Hao were not excited at all. The incomparably strong confidence on their faces turned into shock in the blink of an eye. Faintly, there was even some fear in their eyes. They realized that the sword in their hands did not stab a person. Instead, it was like an incomparably hard, towering, ancient rock that radiated endless vitality. The swords had penetrated 3 inches, but could not go any further. And now, the 4 emperor armaments were tightly clamped together. They suddenly discovered that it seemed that they were the ones being restricted, especially when they were so close to Qin Hao. That majestic aura gave them the illusion that they were facing a high and mighty great emperor. The 4 ignorant, primitive emperors were the insignificant ones. This is the killing movie set up? Qin Hao looked at Xianyuan Wuing. Then, a dazzling silver light bloomed. His body was covered by mercury that appeared out of nowhere. The mercury flowed like a river in the starry sky. Even the arm of the old man with the broken sword, who had activated his sword soul, was shot off. At that time, the old man with the broken sword had been a 6th level Yuan Venerate, but he had still almost died on the spot. However, there were only a group of 3rd-level Yuan Venerates and a 4th-level Yuan Venerate in front of them. More importantly, how could they dodge when they were locked on at such a close distance? 1 arrow and 4 emperors had been destroyed. At this moment, everyone was extremely shocked. Even Elder Meng didn't dare to breathe loudly. Everyone thought that Qin Hao would be torn to pieces by the sword aura of the 4 Yuan Venerates. However, in the blink of an eye, the sacred and gorgeous silver armor was on his body. Qin Hao's aura surged strangely and turned the situation around. The arrow had destroyed the 4 emperors and made Xianyuan Wuying's unsolvable trap become a joke. Are you still able to laugh so loudly? Qin Hao looked at Xianyuan Wuying. At this moment, the 4 powerful Yuan Venerates were still piercing his silver armor. However, he was completely standing beside Xiao Han. No one dared to move forward. His whole body was exuding an incomparable heroic spirit. Of course, Xianyuan Wuying couldn't laugh. He was simply speechless. He would never have expected that the 4 Yuan Venerates, who had been carefully selected from the branches, would be destroyed by Qin Hao with 1 arrow. Although part of the reason was that they had underestimated the enemy. However, Qin Hao's combat strength had crossed a heavenly cycle realm. He was a completely monstrous existence, extremely abnormal. At this moment, Dinda had refreshed everyone's worldview. His strength was far stronger than what they had imagined. When they turned back to look at Chang Lo, he was like an ant. Xianyuan Wuying was silent. However, Qin Hao put another arrow on the bowstring. His aura actually locked onto Xianyuan Wuying. Everyone couldn't help but cry out in alarm. What was he trying to do? Could it be that Pavilion Master Shiliang thought that he still had the ability to kill Xianyuan Wuba's twin brother with 1 arrow? He was a peak Yuan Venerate who had just comprehended the laws of the Emperor's will and was about to enter the half-step Emperor realm. Qin Hao's response was to shoot. Moreover, this arrow was even stronger than when he had killed the 4 Yuan Venerates. It was as if all the forces in the world were mobilized by Qin Hao. The sky was filled with his eyes. It was an arrow that couldn't be dodged. The silver arrowhead was wrapped in a ball of flame, as if it was a ball of burning human blood. At this moment, Qin Hao's 2 souls were opened. The power of the dragon was raised to the extreme. The immortal Samsara technique and the setting sun mantra complemented each other. Between heaven and earth, a vast and boundless emperor's might spread.